31. Is there any adjustments to the agenda? Chris, got anything? Perfect, neither do I. I would like to review and approve board minutes for July 26. Priscilla, how do they look?
I glanced briefly through them as far as I could quickly do. They look fine.
I didn't see anything, but sometimes you're better at it than I am, so that's
Yeah,
why I
I
put you on the
didn't-
spot.
I didn't read them, and with a lot, I have a lot going on right now, so I briefly looked through them.
Perfect. David, can I have a motion to approve them?
Yes, yes, Molly, I would like to move the minutes, please.
We have a motion to approve the board minutes for July 26.
Madam
Is there
Chair,
any discussion? Yes, sir.
no discussion, but just a request. I could not hear Mr. Clark. Is he with you this evening?
He
Mr.
is.
Clark had his mic off.
That would explain a great deal. Thank you.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
Thank you. The motion is to accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to approve the board minutes of July 26 as presented. I'm going to take a roll call. Deb,
Aye.
Priscilla,
Aye.
Steve,
Sure, why not?
thank you. Dave,
Yes.
Jason?
Yeah.
Jack?
Yep.
Perfect. The minutes have been approved. Communication and public comments. Chris, do I have any? Thank you. Policies. We have the second reading on the McKinney-Vento, and action will probably happen. I would like to hear from Priscilla on this, please.
I would make a motion that we accept the second reading and warn it for adoption at the next meeting.
Is there any discussion or questions for this policy? We read it at the last meeting, had some discussion. Priscilla, can you give us just a quick rundown on what it is?
It's policy that's required by the state for taking care of homeless students. And it outlines what we do with any student that is within our district, that so that they can go to school in our district for an extended time if they need to, or this situation so that they will be able to be taken care of. And it tells us about how to move them to other districts if that's what the student and the parent want, or what all the things that are happening with that. It just details it.
Thank you. Does any board member have any questions about this? It appears there are none. This is the second read. Do we approve this now, or does it have to go to one more? We can approve it. So you
Madam
have,
Chair, the second read is the approval read.
Yeah, we approve it and then it goes to the board to be warned for adoption.
thank you. So there is a motion on the floor to accept the second read of the McKinney-Vento policy. All
And-
those in favor,
and
I'm
to
going
warn
to do
it,
a roll call.
Molly, and to warn it for the next meeting for adoption was part of the
And
motion.
to warn it, okay, and to warn it for the next meeting for adoption. Deb,
Aye.
Priscilla,
Aye.
Steve,
Sure, why not?
Dave,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Jack Breyer.
I say yes, although I really think that we had established that at the individual board level, it was simply an up and down vote, but I'll say yes for tonight.
Brenda? The motion passes to accept the second reading of the McKinney-Vento policy. the next thing we have in the policy is retirement gift discussion. My understanding was that this needed to go to the policy committee, and we have not had a policy committee since the last meeting when that discussion happened. Do we have a date for a policy committee?
Molly, who is on our committee? I was on it, I know.
I am on it. I thought
you-
Jack Breyer was on it,
I am on it too.
and Brenda says she is on it.
Okay, because I thought there were just 3 of us that were, but there might have been more, so that's 4, so. Okay. We can look back too and make sure.
So Priscilla, this is something that you've brought up to us. Why don't you get to us tomorrow with some dates on when you can get together?
Okay,
And then
Will
we'll
do.
get something started.
Okay.
All right, so retirement gift discussion is getting handed over to the policy committee, and we will get a meeting established. Next thing we're going to is the principal's report. Mr. Broadley.
Okay. Mr. Broadley's mic is not on.
Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me now, Jack?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, quite a few points. I did send out I just sent out the report electronically, which you may have got, and I've given out board members here. The first item was the HVAC airflow and ventilation in the school. And again, I've spent a lot of time on this, and Mr. DeBell and Mr. Burke are here tonight. If there's any further questions that I won't be able to answer, they're more technical than I am in this area. So in the light of recent concerns around the system, I wanted an engineer to come in who had designed it. So I asked Glenn Thomas if he could come in. This was after our last board meeting when Mr. Clark had a lot of concerns about it, quite rightly so. And I really didn't know a lot about it at the time. So he came in and evaluated and gave us a report to look at all the discrepancies and deficiencies of the M&E engineering report. The report is, you have the report to look at and digest, to compare against the M&E report. And for me, there is a need for further work to complete our HVAC efficiency. And it's my responsibility, it's our responsibility collectively to provide the safest environment for our students to learn. And the last meeting, that's what kind of, it was a concern to me, because I know a lot of our viewers out there were concerned, quite rightly, with the pandemic still floating around, about sending their kids back to school and hearing a lot of the downside of our HVAC system. That's not going to promote them to want to go, yeah, I want to be in that building. So having that concern, Mr. Thomas did come in, and I'm hoping that his response will provide a little bit of clarity for us to move forward and hopefully utilize the grant funding, whether it be ESSA or the ARP grants, to improve our efficiency and maximize the healthy conditions for our students, and also not burden taxpayers if we can get this done through one of the grants. So I don't know if you have any imminent questions. I know it's a fond one of you, Mr. Clark. So,
Madam Chairman, I do have a couple of questions. My first question, John, is when was the ME engineering report distributed to the board?
I believe we got it in April, but you guys didn't. I don't think you got it
To the best of my
July.
knowledge, John, the only member of this board who has seen the ME engineering report is the one sitting opposite you here. So to have Mr. Thomas report here tonight is, of course, very helpful. I do have to note that Mr. Thomas has an iron in the fire because he designed the system that ME says is deficient in its operation. And obviously, if Mr. Thomas is going to weigh in on ME's assessment of the system, it would be, I think, would be entirely correct to have ME weigh in on Mr. Thomas's. The difference between the two, of course, is that Thomas certainly had a dog in the fight, and ME was an impartial third party. That does lead me right off the bat to have some suspicions about the impartiality that Mr. Thomas's report suggests here. I'm certainly glad that you got it, but I don't think that the jury is in any way back, so to speak, in terms of whose facts here are correct. And I think that we need to cross-check facts. And the reason that I have a certain amount of skepticism around the Thomas report is the Thomas report seems to be written in response to a newspaper story. And when we're talking about HVAC, it's the facts on the ground, or in this case, maybe the facts that are on the roof that matter. And according to the ME report, there are a number of facts on the roof that don't add up or are deficient. Ideally, what I would like to see is both Mr. Thomas and ME in the room at the same time so that we can reconcile the differences between the two reports. But to cast the ME report as being erroneous, poorly drafted, poorly researched, I think it's incorrect. And I think what bothers me most of all here, John, is bluntly, the administration kicked this football around at least since January when they had a preliminary from ME. There was discussion within the building based on the minutes of the high school meetings in February, yet the findings of ME were never broached to this board until I brought them up at the last meeting. And quite bluntly, I will say it clearly, I think that Principal Hosden sandbagged it for almost 12 months. And I'm not at all happy to find what I consider to be essentially a hatchet job here done on the work of ME. So of course, I'm an opinionated guy, and if there was any question about it, you know it now.
No, Mr. Clark, I know you a little bit. I felt that for me was a starting point. It's not by any manner of means the end solution, because I'm not an engineer. I'm not privy to a lot of the last information. That's not an excuse, it's just a reality. But now it's firmly in my control. So I plan to follow up and make sure with yours and others' guidance on how we can handle this the best way. And I don't know if Jim has any further comments to add in, because you were with both parties. So I don't know. I'd like to call on his expertise.
Yeah, another mic that doesn't work, sorry.
Yeah, no volume.
That was working good.
I see you, Priscilla, but hold on, we're just gonna let Jim speak.
Absolutely.
Is it on now? Yes, no? Good? I do, like this?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So my own feeling as one who's run the system and is somewhat familiar with it, for what it's worth, is we're putting a lot of outside air into this building with the system that we have in most of the areas, not all of the areas. It was purposely designed in 2013 and 2018 to save energy, which is why some of the heat wheels and stuff were not utilized. And this is just by way of an explanation, but that is addressable through programming. So we can get the units functioning as designed with little effort, if you will. The C wing and the B wing, which are specifically mentioned, which are the gym and the auditorium and that stuff, were slated for a separate phase when we were doing this stuff. Therefore, they were not touched at that time. The thought process was the units are inside of the building. They're not like sitting on the roof or what have you. So they were pushed farther down the line. I'm not going to say whether that was correct to do or not. It was just what we did. I think the controls are completely replaced in this building. We have a complete set of digital controls. So we have very precise control over what the functions of the units are. We do have deficiencies in some of the louvers for the outside because they're 50 years old and they have worn. All of that stuff is certainly addressable. I'm not here to say what the priority is in addressing it or anything, but this is just kind of an oversight into what we have right now. We had VOSHA come through this building at the start of this stuff, and the guy asked if he could use us as a model for other buildings. We have a lot of capability to exchange air in here, which is kind of what the guidelines at the time were all about. I don't know if this is any help to you or not, but that's kind of a boots on the ground look at where things are at from my point of view.
Go ahead, David. You're
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate the remarks. Board members and all the administration at the table, with the exception of Andy and Jim, if I can lump you into administration, Jim, have had the benefit of an analysis, brief analysis, which I wrote up this afternoon about the ME report. Also attached to that report is a month by month look at the minutes of this board and how the issues around HVAC were treated between the first ask in August and this past meeting in July, when I started quoting from that report. So I would urge anyone here at the table who has a copy and hasn't had the chance to read it, you should read it. If there is anyone who does not have a copy of that analysis from me, a simple email to david.clark@wnesu.com will get you one. I appreciate the fact that there was follow-up work done, but bluntly, I think that the fact that the board is finally talking about HVAC a year after the original request to investigate it is a little bit late. However, that's water over the dam. It's what happens going forward here. But I do think we need to square away the engineering reports, one from a disinterested third party and the other from the engineer who designed the system that appears to have sufficient shortcomings. So thank you, Molly.
So just one thing, and then I'll start calling on everybody. David, I think we've heard you, and thank you. We're going to give administration, our new administration, a chance to react to this. I have read David's email, and I, you know, I knew it, but reading it reminded me of how it kind of got pushed aside every single month. And we all sat here and did the bobblehead, and we should have probably been a little bit more assertive on getting these answers. But John, it's your second meeting. This is probably going to be on the agenda for a few more times, but we'll get it straightened out. And I have faith that between you and Jim, you're going to get the answers that David and all the rest of us need. So thank you. Priscilla, you had your hand up.
Yeah, my question involves, how is air conditioning also being considered within, these, while we're making these improvements and looking at what we need to do? And I guess Jim probably would have to answer that, or somebody else if they can.
Hope it's on. I'd like to advocate for it, Priscilla, just because I think it's going to provide a better environment. I mean, we heat it in the wintertime. I think the kids are going to do better if it's comfortable inside of here during the border, the fall and the spring. So I would have to advocate for it. I don't think the cost is going to be that much greater. It's not like the old days where you'd throw an air conditioner in the window and hear the meter buzzing away out there, I don't believe. But I think you'll get a finer end product if the building is comfortable.
Jason?
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. So my opinion is that there's nothing we can do about the past, and we need to be forward thinking in how we react to this.
Pardon me, Madam Chair, if Jason could get his mic a bit closer or turn it on or something.
Can you hear me now, Jack?
Oh, still kind of, you're a little bit, it's better.
Can you hear me now? So how much did we pay for these microphones? So my opinion is that we need to be forward thinking in how we're dealing with this. And I think that, based on my expertise, a little bit enough to have with HVAC, is that we can do this in steps quickly and immediately, some of these things. As far as when I was reading a report, sounds like there's some CO detectors that when there's more people in the building, it calls for the louvers or whatever to open to get more air into the building. And when there's less people, it closes a little bit. And it sounded like on the report that they were not working correctly. So that for me, that would be an easy fix right away that we fix. And then there's also these, the electronic air cleaner that, we're talking about safety for the kids and the teachers. So that electronic air cleaner, as it's like a light, as air is rushing through the machines, it kills virus and bacteria, up to a certain percentage. So those are, easily replaced. Some of the things like I do at home is we have these small air filters in some of the rooms. So maybe that's something to look into. But, the $244,000 is a big nugget to spend a lot of money on. But I just think that, forward thinking, we can't fix the past, but we can, do some things immediately and not waste any more time and get this thing going now. Just my opinion.
Jack, we haven't heard from you yet.
Yes. Okay, a couple quick things. One is there is to the extent that I have been given sort of the 30-second summary of the report, and I did get that in text a while ago. It does seem that there's a discrepancy in that if we have a report that says the system is insufficient, and we are also hearing that a lot of it may be a matter of programming and that the person doing the evaluation didn't fiddle with the programming, that makes me uncomfortable because something's wrong there. I don't think it's a real secret. I've been saying for at least 10 years that the buildings had structural issues and AC issues, environmental issues. It does seem to me that we have an opportunity right now to address them. One of the objectives of both the stimulus package and of ESSER are to rectify those issues that are outstanding that affect health and safety. It's particularly important as we consider those options that we look at items that are one-time expenses, because if we assign things to ESSER funds and then have to pay for them every year for the next 20 years. We've just basically voted a tax increase. And these type of issues where we can address structural things such as our air handling system seem to me a high priority item to get some numbers on, so that we might be able to see if in fact they can be covered by ESSER or other stimulus money, because, well, it's either that or raise a bond at some point. And I think that if we can do it quickly, if we can get some hard numbers, the ESSER guidelines give us vastly more discretion in favor of getting it done sooner rather than having all the I's dotted and T's crossed. And I'd like us to head in that direction and to see if we can start to put together a program solution, either with these two fine engineers or with somebody, so that we can get it done this year to the extent that that's possible.
Thank you, Jack. Deb Wright?
Having read some of the report and having heard from Mr. Clark in a previous meeting, I just want us to be careful about throwing good money after bad. I understand that some of this does need to be done. I also understand that some of these things were done incorrectly the last time. That's my understanding. There were some errors made by the previous construction, by the HVAC company. And that is called a make good. We don't need to spend new money on things that we already paid for. I know that public funding, typically people don't think about that, but the reality is if you get bad work, you need bad work to be fixed. And if bad work was done originally, it doesn't matter how old it was, they should need to come and fix it. So I just want us to make sure that when we get to the point where corrections are being made as quickly or as slowly as possible, or phased, or whatever we do, the reality is that we shouldn't be spending more money when the money was spent poorly the first time. That needs to be fixed. Thank you. But I do believe it needs to be taken care of.
Thank you. Steve Fine, do you have any comments?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you very much. John, I think you've got a lot of information there.
Thank you, everybody.
Let's move on to senior project.
Okay, next senior projects were on the list, and again, I'm just responding to what was asked, I believe, by the board.
That's right.
We've begun senior projects. The handbook has gone out, and the completion dates are assessed for kids to see and move along with, and the guide should guide our students along the process. There's from memory, there's 5 or 6 kids already off and running with their senior project now. So I think we're in a good spot for that. So
I think we had some discussion at the last meeting. Which teacher is taking control of the senior projects?
both, I've got the Deborah Rossman and Susan Speranza are going to both take on the senior project. One has got expertise in proofreading. Between them, they're going to help organize it. This year, I'm hopeful that we'll get a lot more public presentations, which were harder last year. You know, we did a lot of in-building presentations and whatnot. So I'd like to get back to the, you know, have a board member, have a teacher on a committee and assess them and really show how wonderful a lot of these projects are. It was actually voiced as well that we should maybe have a night where we present them to a panel, but also to maybe in the auditorium, because they are wonderful things when you see them unfold. So more to follow on that. I mean, Sean and I are gonna sit down and talk about it and see what guidelines we've got with the state and where which direction the pandemic continues to head. I'm very optimistic. I always will be. In fact, you know, I was talking to the young man doing the vaccinations on Friday, and one of the medical staff there said that he hopes that the new variant will spike in about 4 weeks and then start heading downwards. So Again, I'm not a medical person, so don't quote me on that, but that was very positive to me. So to get moving into the fall in a good direction. So
Good.
um,
Priscilla, were you the one that had the senior project on your list? Which board member was asking about that? Do you have any other questions? Somebody had it on their list.
I was.
Okay, Jack, did you hear what you needed to hear? Would you like to ask some
Well,
questions?
just a couple quick other items. I mean, John and I go back on senior projects a very long time at this point. And part of senior projects goal set is to give students a leg up either vocationally or educationally as they go forward. This is their moment to distinguish themselves. And it's also a community item. This is where we put community into community education. So the question I have, John, is what have we done in terms of outreach? You know, have we talked to the chamber? Have we talked to SEVCA? Have we talked to Rotary, MSA, Wyndham Foundation, the major service organizations in the area? Because it seems to me that every year when this comes up, usually about May, I hear from one of those. They say, gosh, we could have really used X, or we have a project we think is really interesting. Main Street Arts, for example, recently had one about lighting, which is something that's actually an item for the high school as well as MSA. And when we did a little investigation, we found that with a BA in lighting design, the first year out of college average income is over $85,000, which isn't too shabby for a 20-year-old coming out of school. And there are similar things that have come up at SEVCA, that have come up at some of these other entities. And I just want to make you aware that they're there and urge you to do some outreach. Send stuff to them. Say, we really need you to be full participants, because that was really the whole idea between senior projects going back to high schools at work days.
Now that's a point well taken, Jack. I think in the last 2 years anyway, we've certainly not done much, if any. I do think it's a very good point and that we need to get back out there. One example that freshly comes to mind, I think David mentioned either at the last meeting or in some communication, we were talking about someone maybe filming board meetings and, you know, doing that as a senior project, you know, as an example. You know, they exist all over. I mean, there's many great ideas. So I think we need to get back out and start pounding the pavements and letting people know that there's kids out there that are very clever and looking to do these kind of projects. So it's a point well taken. So I've got a note of that. We're going to certainly get on that as well, because I know when we come back to school, not everybody's going to have their project done, their proposal in, and they're ready to go. I know from doing them over the last number of years, 12 years, 14 years, that you know, some kids, I've had a student go as far as into the second semester before they even thought about doing something. And again, I know there's different situations, but if we can help point them in a direction, that will also help them. So thank you for that.
Great.
Priscilla?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that though, because we can point a little bit, but senior projects are supposed to be a project that the student comes up with that they're interested in. So we need to be sure that we're allowing them the right to come up with the projects, because that's part of their independence and part of their independent training about how to come up with things and do things. And so maybe doing some of these ideas under community service might be a way to go also. And yes, you do need to guide if the student doesn't have an idea for a senior project. You know, just be careful is what I'm saying. I want them to learn to be independent and learn to come up with their ideas as much. Or maybe just saying, well, maybe you'd be interested in talking to this corporation, see what they could develop with them, rather than suggesting, you know, having the corporation suggest a project to send to them. Because that way it means they haven't come up with the idea. But the service organizations that Jack was talking about might very well have a lot of community service that the students could do. And that's not something the student has to come up with on their own. Thanks.
Madam Chair.
Hold on, Jack. I see your hand, but just want to make sure everybody else has been heard.
Sure.
I can't see everybody, but Deb, do you have any questions?
No, I'm
Steve,
fine.
do you have
I'll
any-
listen to the discussion. I'm fine.
Steve, do you have any questions?
I do not.
David?
Good here, Molly. It's actually, I think, an interesting discussion.
Jason? All right, Jack, it's all you.
Yeah. I certainly appreciate Priscilla's point. I'm just saying that one of the things that happens when you're in high school is you don't necessarily know what the rest of the world looks like. And one of the ways that a senior project can be used in conjunction with guidance, in conjunction with everybody that's involved, is just to put before students the array of organizations they could work with and sample ideas, the types of things they could do. It's not to prepare a menu for everybody to pick one. It's not an elective of one, but it is a way of at least stimulating a conversation. And I think that's where we're starting here, is just to make students aware of the entities that could be sponsoring these projects, and to make the entities that could be and ought to be sponsoring these projects aware that there's a whole pile of bright high school kids that A, have a lot of energy, and B, have to do it anyway, that are available. And that may be a good starting point. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Mr. Broadley, how about social studies curriculum to address current events and social trends?
Yes, when I saw this on, I first of all spoke to Mr. Obi, our social studies coordinator, and he polled his department, and I really wanted a short answer. With I wasn't sure exactly what we're looking for, but I think we got a reasonable answer in his response here, that they are incorporating current events and social trends into classes, and it's based on the C3 standards. What I've done is I've given you all a link in your electronic version, because that booklet is actually about 112 pages, so I didn't want to print them off tonight. The standards discuss the need to learn about history in order to relate to it today. But the new step in the curriculum is really taking action and being an active citizen, taking what's going on today and using history to help us interpret and react. And the classes that are most involved in this this work are world history, US history, geography, and the psych and social class, and then incorporate current events, social trends, helping students to connect to this material, and also the critical thinking skills needed and embedded in the class. Social studies department will be happy to do a more complete presentation to the board in a future meeting if that is something that the board wants as well, or if an individual would like, they'd be more than happy to come and give a full explanation of a lot of what they do and a lot of what the classes are. And I know in the past we've had different departments come in and present to the board, because I do believe it's important that the board stay aware of everything that we do in school. So.
Oh, I think when we did that a couple of years ago, that was pretty neat, because, you know, I don't think any of us, maybe Jason, knows what the teachers are teaching at this point, but we don't have kids in here, and I think that's a great idea. Any questions for Mr. Broadley on the social studies curriculum? Jack, I see your hand up.
Yeah, this might have been another one of my suggested items. John, there was a social media gathering not that long ago, involved Quora and Facebook and a couple other folks, and they asked thought leaders around the country what they thought the biggest gaps were in social studies curriculum. And I'll just read off the 3 items that came up most often. And the only reason I know this is because I was asked to participate. One was basic civics literacy. You know, people really don't understand the basic constitutional stuff, which is one of the reasons why you get these wild claims about what the Constitution says. And that it should be not only what does it say, but how can you make the system work? You know, community organizing for dummies, if you will, as sort of a 10 days of that program would be good. The second was science literacy. We've all seen some of the wild and woolly stuff that's come out, conspiracy theorizing about COVID, the non-understanding of very basic science items that make conversations kind of a dialogue of the deaf or notes passed between illiterates. And we need to deal with this. The history of the 20th century is a history of science and technology. And if we don't include that as part of what's important, then we really missed a lot. You know, battles are great, laws are important to understand, but the reality is that everything that's surrounding you right now is a product of technological innovation, and we don't talk about it in history. And it's the most important thing that's happening, and it's the thing that's controlling the lives of our kids, is the onward march of technology. And we don't teach science as part of history. We don't teach technological change as part of history. And in many cases, that's really the only stuff that really matters to most of them. And we need to make sure it's embedded. So I'll pass those suggestions on. I actually think they're good ones, since I actually made one of them in that forum. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Anyone else? I can only see a few. David?
Well, if I haven't jumped in deep enough already, I need to add a little additional context here, and that is that there are concerns about what is referred to as critical race theory. And I've heard from at least one parent who has concerns that we're teaching it here at the high school. And I told that parent that if she had concerns about instruction at the high school, that those concerns were certainly legitimate, that she should get the answers that would satisfy her curiosity. And I have to say, we are in a uniquely difficult epoch in history here. We've had we've just ended a very divisive war. We're not looking very good the way we came out of it. It's ironic, just almost exactly 50 years after the last time we were involved in a very divisive war. And bluntly, John and Sean, I think we need to be aware that we do have, I don't want to call them social critics, but people in the community are very inquisitive about what our curriculum looks like and why we teach what we teach and what's embedded in it. So I hope that to the degree that it's possible, we can invite parents and community into the process, not necessarily sitting in the classroom during social studies, but as was suggested here earlier by Molly, where we have had nights where we have had programmatic reviews. I think the public should be encouraged to come in and attend those programmatic reviews and ask questions, because the worst kind of question to have is one that you can't get an answer to. And my experience is that people who have the opportunity to engage with this board generally walk out of the room feeling better about it, even when they don't like what we do.
That's a very good, David. I agree with you, and I think another to add on with our a lot of our NIAS stuff coming up as well. I think it's ideal timing to have some community forums and have some presentations just to let everyone know exactly what, or maybe not exactly, but mostly what we do. So, because we're here for the kids, we're here for families, we're here for everyone in the community, and that's what we pride ourselves on. So, again, I'll repeat a comment that I made to the kids. You know, it says on the door, whether it was John Broadley, assistant principal, or John Broadley, principal, it doesn't make me Superman. I'm just like you. So, and I think that's one thing that this regime is willing to listen to and move forward and not be right or wrong, just listen to everybody and respond to it. So, and hopefully time will tell. You know, I can say that now, but hopefully I'll be able to follow through with it. And Sean too, and everyone here, Jim, Sean, everyone involved. So
Good. All right. I think I've gotten everybody on the social studies curriculum. Am I missing somebody? Chris, am I missing somebody? I can't see everybody. Okay. Mr. Broadley, any other updates? Anything else you'd like to tell us?
Okay, so I'll run through because I don't want to monopolize the whole meeting. Number 4 is specifically for you, Priscilla. I listened to your, and it was very interesting for me about, I just wondered how many colleges took our AP courses and the grades and what were out there. So if you look a bit deeper in your packet, you'll find a list of general research that I did. It's right on the back page of the packet, where in all the courses we do, it tells you the total number of colleges that accept the AP classes and at what level, 3, 4, or 5. I also gave you the links to all of those if you want to go off and do further. The site that I found, the College Board, it's awesome. You can play with it, you can filter it, and look at the names of colleges. I didn't want to put them all out there because there's thousands of colleges there, but hopefully you'll find it interesting and helpful.
Priscilla, any questions?
Yeah, John, did you give us the levels that our students got?
Well, not directly. I don't think we gave them all out. Passing is 3 and above, but I didn't give the individual student levels. No.
Okay, because that was kind of more my question than that. I do know that certain colleges do the other, and I understand that, and that's why I asked the question. So I was wondering where ours stood, and so that when they were applying, whether they would actually get credit or not. Because if the college accepts it's only a 4 or a 5, and our student has a 3, then they wouldn't get credit for that course at that college. And of course, it depends on what college they apply to.
Well, I think using this though, now that I've done a bit of research on it, it'll be helpful for kids as well, that if they are even narrowing down to colleges, that may, be a part of their decision-making process now. So they can look at the colleges and what levels they accept and what they actually got, and then use them. So, I mean, I still think it'll be helpful. I didn't know this existed. I knew there was some form of data, but this when you click on one of these, you'll see it. It's phenomenal. It gives you everything from the College Board. So
Yeah. So could you give us the number for the next, in the next few days or something?
You mean
The numbers that got, yeah, each 3s,
Sure.
4s,
How many
and
kids?
5s.
How many kids got 5s and how many 4s and how many 3s?
Yes. And
Okay,
it depends too, because a lot of the colleges are stricter on certain ones, like the history area. A lot of them require the 4s and 5s, whereas a lot of them in the math, calculus, and that I think will accept 3s. So that depends too on what area it is. That would be
There are
helpful to know as well.
quite a lot of colleges except the level. That's what amazed me. I would say in general, looking at the data, there's probably about 60 or 70% of the schools that accept them take 3s, and it's only the more select schools. I noticed a lot of the Ivy League schools take 5s and not 4s and 3s. So again, that's just one example. But yeah, I can do that for you next time.
Thank you.
Summer drivers, just to give everybody the update on that, that we had 25 students, all of them passed. A couple by the skin of the teeth, they all got through, which was a very effective use of the summer for those kids. Fall sports, were so far with football, boys soccer, girls soccer, field hockey, and cross country. We have over 100 students. It's about 104, 105 students participating. Hopefully that number should increase once students come back to school. Often a few more get involved once they're here. Spaghetti dinner, the spaghetti dinner for the class of 2025 is on Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. It's at 6 p.m. and everyone's invited. We'd love to see board members there. That would be phenomenal. And community members there too. Where are we? Go over the back here. A lot of the time we'll use for students just to get another feel of the building, get the schedules. There's a few interactive stuff we do with a commitment to graduate certificate and poster that kids have fun doing. Last minute tour of the building, ask any questions before school begins on that Tuesday. And we will follow all the AOA and state guidelines for COVID safety to make sure everybody's safe. So be glad to see everyone. Number 8, I put this on here, new basketball head coach. After we completed the interview and the selection process from the committee, pleased to announce that Evan Chadwick is our boys head basketball coach. And we will now begin the search for a JV coach, with Mr. Chadwick joining of the committee for looking for that. And lastly, for now, and it kind of weaves into one of the earlier points, we've been looking at developing, and Sean's had a huge hand in this, developing a new financial literacy course. And our desire is to board for actually have it as a graduation requirement. And I'm going to have Mr. Murphy just tell you a little bit now. We're not bringing it tonight. We just want to give you a kind of appetizer for it. And as we develop it, we will keep you firmly involved.
Thanks, John. So I started working on this years ago with Chris Hodgson and coming up with what we could do to get our financial literacy. I know that the board has talked about it at times. You see people in the community asking about it. So as a math teacher, I was often asked why we don't do something like this. So our hope is that the class of 2025 will have a half credit of financial literacy as part of their graduation requirement. And with that, we have explored other options on how to pull it off. Talking, Jack, about things that you just brought up that our kids need, and thinking about, okay, how can we take a half credit of financial literacy and pair it with another credit and a half of items that we think that they need. So things like Health 2, which we already teach, and a global citizenship, and then some sort of like scientific literacy, media literacy, whatever you want to call it, where you get these kids that are in a pod similar to the specials programs in a middle school. So they as 11th and 12th graders go from one of these classes to the next, to the next, to the next, and that's a block of their day for the year. So the main goal is get a half a credit of financial literacy, and then how do we bring in these other things at the same time? So we're excited to start exploring it. And I taught math apps for years with the financial literacy, I guess, component to it, and Tim Clark's taking that over this year with the understanding that he should take his curriculum and in 2 years be ready with what's the half credit worth of the most important stuff for these kids going forward. And then that would be the basis of our financial literacy half credit curriculum. So it's certainly a work in progress, but definitely needed step in what we can get our kids.
David?
Thank you, Molly. I'm pleased to hear that financial literacy is being addressed finally. I want to back up just a few months, maybe 18 of them. And I hearken back to the Haber grant, which was $250,000 of private money that came into BFUHS. And from memory, the proposed uses for the Haber grant were financial literacy, also to promote distance learning, and laterally math and the sciences. We had a look at that Haber grant and accounting for it, I think earlier in the spring. And if I recall correctly, there had been about $15,000 of expenditures from Haber, mostly to support Brigham Young University online classes that we had always paid for directly out of the high school budget previously to the availability of the Haber money. So I hope, Sean, that you will be able to utilize Haber to really get a top-notch financial literacy program going. Lord knows we need it. In fact, I would say we all need it. I want to go just a little bit further, and that is to talk about the distance learning component. One of my great disappointments that has come out of COVID is the fact that we did not utilize Haber timely to actually address this. And those who've been at the table for a while probably are well aware that I have proposed to the high school board in years past that we require 1 credit from distance learning, just 1 credit, so that kids who go out the door are prepared for an environment where continuing education is very often, if not most times, delivered online. Board didn't support it a few years ago. I'm, of course, greatly disappointed because with the advent of the Haber money, we certainly weren't being held back by cost considerations. And I'm hoping that when you're casting around for that credit or credit and a half to pair up with, that very serious consideration would go in to distance learning, because bluntly, I think that the kids who attended this school last year would have been well served to have had it. I'm very impressed by the way teachers in this building, Molly, and all the buildings scrambled to move into a hybrid environment, but nothing beats thoughtful planning ahead of an event compared to scrambling after that black swan is upon us. So once again, Sean, great job. I want to urge the board, since board has ultimate authority over what graduation requirements to look at, to what graduation requirements will be, to take another hard look at distance learning. We got the money to do it. Thank you, Molly.
Jason?
Mr. Bradley, I have a couple questions. Going back to number 4 on the AP stuff. What is your plan and Mr. Murphy's plan to generate some excitement about getting more kids to take AP stuff? And how will we incentivize the high flyers in the school to achieve even more?
Sorry. To answer that, I don't have a full answer right now, but our initial conversation is to first meet with our AP teachers now when they return in part of our in-service plan. We want to talk about what's going well for them and how can we support them. Next, we want to grow more AP programs. And then lastly, when we're all set, we want to find a way to encourage, albeit many different ways, to encourage more kids to step up to the and take that challenge. I don't know the exact ways we're going to do that, but I think as the confidence in the building grows and as we get back to kind of normal, I use that term loosely, but I'm confident, and those that have known me in here have always encouraged our kids to shoot higher and aim higher. So I don't think it'll be too hard to do once we get the mindset changed, to change the kids' mindsets.
Mr. Murphy, how about you?
So I think we have some really good resources. I don't know how familiar you are with what Justin Obi does with the AP, but he goes out and grades on an annual basis and has moved up the ranks in the AP. So he's now writing questions, and he's going to be a great resource on how we can take what he's doing in his classes, and his classes, as you heard at the last meeting, scored very well, which is not surprising. And they've scored very well for the past 5-6 years, at least. So taking his expertise and helping kind of share that with some of the other teachers will certainly not necessarily incentivize our students, but provide them with the better strategies and skills to score well in the exams. And day one, when John and I met, we talked about AP and needing to continue to increase the AP offerings we have, bringing back some old ones. When we lost Mrs. Steiner, we lost AP Bio. We'd love to bring that back. Our elective teachers are now coming with proposals on how they can start some APs and get their kids really interested. I think Nick Pelton has expressed interest in doing some AP with the music program, and so there you're gonna immediately get kids that are really into that music to jump on board and work hard on that. So I think all of the above, and we're definitely on it. Like you said, we don't necessarily have ABC steps yet, but we're working on it. And the AP teachers are the experts in the courses. We'll defer to them and get them to come up with some good ideas too.
So I think you guys have been around a long time, right? So Mr. Bradley, you've been a vice principal here for years. My suggestion would be you already have had ideas for a decade or so, and what I'm going to do to change the school, and it's going to be so much better, and just go with your gut and challenge the kids to be better every single day, because again, I'm not happy with being in 16th place, and so that's not okay with myself, but that's just me. And then I gotta Malik, I need to ask one more question. Number 8 about boys basketball, and this is going to be the last time you're going to hear from me on this until I judge you at the end of the season. Okay. So Evan Chadwick, he's a couple questions. What has he been doing the last 8 years? Because he was the previous coach prior to Coach Studley, which was 4 coaches ago. So Ryan Studley was I think 4 years ago, and then prior to that, Evan Chadwick was the coach for a long time. What was his record? Yeah. What was his record, and why did you guys decide to go in that direction?
Well, let me rewind back. Evan had a successful 6 years here playing in Division 2. Okay, so again, it's slightly more challenging. A few more kids playing in that time frame. I believe, anyway, in conversation. He left on a good note. He was about 500, maybe a tad over 500. Looking at you can go on the BPA website, you can see all his seasons up there. He was taking the bar on the last year that he coached, and he passed the bar, and he left to begin his lawyer career, and it was just too much for him to do both at that time. He has since established himself very well. He is excited, motivated, and ready to go back into the fold and take the team places.
So what I remember is how many playoff games did he win in his career here?
I can't tell you exactly.
What would you consider to be successful? You said he was successful.
think he was successfully played in a, let's say, it's a fairly tough division, and being 500 in overall, I think latterly, his last few years, he was more successful than early on. And again, as you know, it goes in phases of kids, phases of players, and when kids come in and abilities. But he was well respected. He was great from what I remember. Again, it's less than I remember. 8 years ago, he was well liked. He was efficient. He was a good communicator. He didn't get involved in social media. Didn't really, maybe minimally, but to a major effect that impacts what goes on in the program. And he was there for kids.
So again, I think you and I have a different expectation of successful. 500 for me is not, and we've had conversations before in the past about that. And so I guess the real question is when I talk to Coach Chadwick, and this is not about Coach Chadwick at all. My concern again is what is the administration going to do to back up the coach? Because when I talked to him, he was concerned about, parents that kids weren't getting playing times wanted to fight him in the parking lot. And this is 8 years ago. And so I'm just wondering, it seems like we're going backwards instead of forward. And, that's direct dialogue with Coach Chadwick several months ago. And I'm just so concerned. I think that current team we have, anybody could coach that team and be 500 because they're that good. Anybody can coach team be 500. They're Division III. There's so much talent on that team, 1 through 15 or 12, that, I'm very concerned about. 500 is not good enough. Putting a banner in the gym is the expectation. Anything short of that is a failure. And I'm not going to say another word until the end of the season. And I wish him the best. And I really hope and anticipate and expect you guys to back him up when somebody's complaining about playing time. Because again, it's varsity level basketball. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Just to follow on there, Evan and I had a long conversation after the committee recommended him, after we gave him kind of a final interview where he came in and he answered a few more questions, taught a few specifics. I've known Evan for a while myself. We're going to give him every opportunity to be backed in every aspect of the game. For me, just so you know, my initial plan, and it's for viewers out there too, what I've seen over time, and I think I mentioned to you when I was on my vacation, I talked to actually a principal and an athletic director down in South Carolina, and they too expressed, a lot of it is about playing time. Most issues around most sports are about playing time in high school. However, you're going to have that, but it's how it's handled by our parents and how it's handled a little bit by the kids, but mostly by our parents. So for me, my first plan of action is to have a meeting with all the parents and players and coach. And I certainly want to put out there that I don't want to see anything on social media. I can't, I'm going to plead with parents not to put things on social media. I can't make them. But a lot of the issues are around, they get inflammable as soon as it goes on there. I think that's the first main point that we've got to conquer in supporting our coach. I think all the equipment, anything he needs, he's already got. They've got a ton of stuff. Over the years, we've been, Mr. Fromfeld had a good rotation on the programs, and I think the players are well off, but we have very generous community members. We've had a ton of stuff. So I think equipment-wise, he's going to be well supported, and anything else he needs, and as it comes along. But I think first and foremost is that first initial meeting in the auditorium with all the parents to say, we got to stay off social media, got to stay off it. that's going to give him his biggest help. So, and as I say, well, I haven't said yet, but I'd love to see him win a banner. This is my first year in charge. I want as many banners up as you do, because I get to brag about them when I retire. So it's not about that, but I also want to see kids have smiles on their faces. I want to see them have a good time. I want them to learn. I want them to learn everything they can about sport and about life in general. And if I can will that to all our coaches, I'm going to do that. So until somebody tells me to stop or be quiet. So, okay, thank you.
Priscilla?
Yes, I'd like to go back to the AP thing. Molly, I don't know if John can answer this, but I also noticed that Andrea is in the, is on too, so maybe she can. Can you tell me how many AP classes they're being given this fall and what levels? I know you had given some at freshman before.
I thought you were, sorry, Priscilla, I thought you were asking Andrea.
Molly, I just mentioned that if John couldn't, maybe she could. But maybe
Yeah,
John can.
okay.
That's
No,
I mean,
without
I'll
John.
go and find that out for you, but if it could be for the next meeting, that would be a lot easier because I don't have it right to hand.
We'll have it as an agenda item next meeting. He doesn't have those numbers right now.
Okay, does he have a general idea, Molly? Because, I mean, I just want a general idea of what they're doing.
Do you?
And that's why I
think
mentioned
maybe-
Andrea, because as a guidance counselor, she might have the information.
Well, yeah, we'll get it for you. Anybody be shooting from the hip from their house,
Okay.
whether they know it or not.
Is it?
Okay, thanks, Molly.
Thank you.
So Priscilla, Sean's just pulled up some information there. Next year, so we have calculus A, English literature and composition, US history, world history, modern, human geography, and we have AP art, 2D and 3D.
I'm sorry, Molly, I didn't hear the last one.
AP art, 2D and 3D. There's actually, it's kind of like those prongs you can take in art. There's a third one, I think it's paper and something else. But we have some kids in 2D and some kids in 3D for next year.
Thank you.
So really, we have 6 AP classes scheduled for next year. And as Sean said earlier, we're hoping to grow for the year after, but we'll keep you posted.
Thanks.
Okay, before we let Mr. Broadley shut his mic off, anybody else need something? Oh, Jack, I see you.
All right. I'd like it if we might be able to put the item of online courses on the agenda at least by October, if not the next one. The reason is it seems to me this is a policy issue and one that's properly that of the board. And 2, we need to know if we're going to commit to that next year because it has budgetary implications. And as somebody who pays attention to the budget, I want to know if we're doing something, if we're not doing something, and if it's part of our plan. So again, I don't think it's necessarily a September item, but I really do think we have to have a dedicated discussion and make a decision come October if our principal and vice principal are open to that as sort of a fish or cut bait deadline.
So we will put that into the policy committee because we are going to have a meeting, right, Priscilla?
That is the hope, yeah.
Anyone else got any questions for the principal before we move on? Deb?
No, I'm fine right now. Thank you.
Steve?
I got nothing.
Perfect. All right. Thank you
Hey, Molly, this is
very
Ian.
much, Mr. Broadley.
Molly, this is Ian. I'm here too. I just
All right.
wanted to, can I grab a
Can't see
second?
you, so I didn't know that.
That's okay. I understand. I heard you say that. I was just wanted to briefly back up something that Priscilla said earlier about the senior projects, which is that I do think that these students, they're basically told what to do and what they're, exactly what they're asked to do. Their whole lives, their whole careers through high school. And so when they get to the senior project, I do agree with Priscilla that it's a real challenge to suddenly come up with their own sort of course of studies, so to speak, or something that is important to them and could be important to the community as well. So I agree with Priscilla that it is an opportunity for independence.
Okay, is there any questions for the principal?
Oh, sorry.
Ian. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I guess I lost the question in my little soliloquy there.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. We go down to finance. Does anyone have any questions for Flora? Flora, do you have anything for us?
Just really quick. So we are finalizing the revenues so we could finish our year. We are completing new employee setups. We are working on the pre-audit documents, getting everything together because we have it in the auditors in-house on October 4th. We're going to have the pre-budget week with the principals on 9/13. And we are hoping to schedule budget presentations with each of you guys by November 1st. And that way we could have everything finalized and approved by December 10th. So just if you guys could think about a date that you could give us the first 2 weeks of November so we could just review the budget for your for the high school, that will be helpful. So that way we could start putting things in our calendar. Okay, and that will be all. Don't want to make it too long for you guys.
Well, I'm going to make it a little longer. I hated the way we did the budget process last year, and maybe it was just me. Maybe I'm old school. Maybe I'm used to being able to look at that chart and be able to look at it a little bit. We all have our fantasies or our ideas of what a school board member should be doing. But a long time ago, when I signed up for this, one of the biggest things a school board member was responsible for is we are fiscally responsible for the school. And I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I would love to see us go back to a more hands-on, not that I'm trying to tell Mr. Broadley how to spend the money, but I'd like to see where the money's going. And sometimes we would find stuff that was a little weird and we were able to talk about it. And sometimes it was right, sometimes it was wrong, but we had that opportunity. And at the end of the year, when January 4th, 5th came along and we needed to vote on a budget, I could very confidently say I went to every single one of those budget meetings and I semi understood what was in that budget. And last year I'd have lied if I told anybody I really knew what we did, because we had just a very few lines and we were supposed to vote on it. So that's my 2 cents. Jack?
I couldn't agree more. That last year was kind of embarrassing. And as the guy who was one of the guys supposedly orchestrating the process, I felt like I let people down because I didn't yell enough about it. So I'm going to do a little yelling now. We have to have a lot of our numbers together by October for the SU budget. We just do. There aren't enough. Otherwise, we're going to literally be meeting every other day in November and December, and people won't be on board. People won't understand. And we haven't even started the process of having the boards announce or discuss their priorities. And that puts us in a very reactive position, which means that we really aren't any more than whining about the numbers and putting in random 5% or 10% cuts. We don't really know what that means. And it's not an informed process. So I would just ask our finance people not to wait on on audits. Audits aren't going to tell us where we need to be next year. we need to have a conversation about, and this board needs to have a conversation, all boards need to have a conversation about what is important to them. Hence my pushing this business of remote education into
I
October.
already know what the surplus is for last year.
Well, surplus, deficit, whatever. The issue here is what is important to you guys? Is it more important to have a championship banner? Is it more important to make sure graduation rates are higher than they have been? Is it more important to have as many kids get through AP? All these things compete with each other for the taxpayers' budget. We need to tell people what we care about and where we see holes in the program and where we see waste or useless things in the program, because otherwise we're not doing anything other than reacting to a bunch of numbers and whining about them. And that's happened now a couple of years in a row, and we just got to stop it.
Priscilla, I see your hand up.
Yes, I agree with a lot of what Jack said. We really need these numbers sooner. If you're meeting with, if Flora is meeting with the principals the week of the 13th of September, they've got their ideas in. They should be able to come up with a draft budget at least by the beginning of October, rather than waiting to the beginning of November, so that we can get started with our ideas as well. We were way too late last year, and I felt very uncomfortable with the amount of information we had and having to come up with that finalized part at the end. We also, at this point, Laura should be with all of the stuff in. She said she was having all the revenues in and all of that, which it should be in August. She should be able to know where we stand as far as surplus and as far as things that were deficit, maybe things that we're going to need to spend a little more on next year or a little less on next year. So we really should be able to have at least some idea at the beginning of October so that we can get started. That's what we talked about last year, and that's what we wanted to share. So
it's part of the calendar that I circulated last April. So
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Flora or Deb? I can't see you.
Yes. Isn't this on the calendar that we talked about last meeting?
It is.
David? Okay, so then the date's been set. We shouldn't even have to have this kind of discussion. We're sort of I get I get everyone's concern. I don't want to be redundant by doing the spanking again, but I have no intention of going into a fire drill to have to pass a budget that we have little understanding of this year as we did last year. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Jason?
Molly, I just wanted to respond to you that I agree with you. And it was my first year doing a budget. And I take everything seriously, whether it's a banner or education. Otherwise, I'm just wasting my time, and I'm not here to waste my time. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anything for Flora? I don't see anyone else. Jack, are you speaking to me?
I'm just making a joke that I think that we've given her more than enough. I'm feeling like we just cut her timeline in half, and that ought to be enough for anybody.
Yeah, so I did try to take into consideration everything you guys brought to me for last year budget and everything. I know, like Jason said, he was new. So if he was new, you can imagine me. I did try to make the best, putting an office together first, and an office that wasn't working well. And after I tried to roll the office, we had to roll in budgets and a lot of things. That's why this year we're trying to have a different approach. That's why immediately once the principals begin, after the first week of class, we're meeting. So that way we could have a better approach with the budget. That way everybody could sit down, review, and we have that time that we need to fix it, because it goes on both ends. It's not only time for you guys to review, it's time to come back for us to be able to sit with principals, discuss things and fix them. So I honestly didn't know which one was the timeframes last year. This year, you know, I have a little more experience. I know already timeframes. So that's why we put a calendar together. It's not set in stone. If you guys need to meet sooner, the idea is to have it clear and have a budget put in place already, so that way we could work with auditors. It doesn't mean that in the in-between, we cannot meet and review anything about the budgets.
So I'm not trying to roll you under the bus here. The only thing I really was concerned about, and I always try not to repeat myself, so maybe I didn't make it, maybe it didn't come out the way I wanted it to, but I don't mind when it is, and I don't think that we need a ton of meetings, but what I would like to see is it go back to that line by line understanding of what the budget is for. I don't think that takes a lot of time if we're prepared and we have that report in front of us. You know, we don't jump around. We start at the first page and we just go down through, and, you know, I might have a question on line 100.5 and I ask Mr. Bradley and he tells me, and then Jason may have something not, you know, down until 300 before there's another question. But I think that it makes me feel like I've done my job much better as a board member when I can actually see that and understand it. And last year it was way too consolidated for my comfort zone. And so, you know, there was maybe 24 lines, which probably made it way easier for you and your office. But for us people here, it made me feel uncomfortable because I couldn't see it. And it's nothing more than me just wanting to be able to answer a community member very confidently that I know what's going on in the budget, and that is what we're supposed to be able to do. So I don't mind when it is. I understand it's on a calendar. I'm just saying that I'd like to have a lot more meat in it than I had last year.
Okay,
Thank you.
understandable. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, let's move on to unfinished business for discussion. Approval of 2021 negotiations for teachers and support staff. I'm not quite sure what that is, John, other than I had this sent to me from Nicole. 3 different positions. Is that what this is? Yes, David.
Thank you for the,
Can't hear
thank you for the
David.
reminder.
Yeah.
Molly, I think that may be the 2021 agreement with the teachers, the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
That maybe Deb can answer to that.
Deb, can you help me with that?
I don't know why it's on the agenda. I have to say, I don't know why. We're into the 21-22 now.
Molly, it's never been approved on our budget. Ours is the only one that has not approved it. Is this board?
Okay, then
That's
Priscilla,
correct.
would you make a motion, please?
They need to be separate though. They're 2 different contracts, I think. So I would make a motion to approve the 2021 CBA agreement with the teachers.
Priscilla, are you trying to say side agreement? Because that would be the correct term.
Well, it's their CBA for that year.
We've not modified the CBA, Priscilla. All we
It
did,
still is part of the CBA. It's a CBA agreement for that year, no matter what. Even if it's only just one slight agreement, it's still for that year. And with everything else in there, you didn't change. So it's
right, therefore,
same.
this was, I mean, you know, our current assistant principal, who was on the negotiating team, may shed some light on this. And I'm wondering if he feels this was a side agreement or we need to re-ratify the entire CBA on this point. Sean?
Jack, let's make
Okay,
it,
whoa,
let's
whoa,
make
whoa,
it
time out, you
easy.
guys.
Let's just do the, let me just do the, agreement to, support the 1.5%. Uh,
That's fine.
what do you want to call it? 1.5%
Side agreement.
increase in the salaries for last year.
So the correct thing we do is Priscilla made a motion and Jack should have amended it to what he thought it should say instead of battering back and forth, but so
Molly,
let
I
me
just do a
understand.
friendly agreement for you. That way it's done.
So right now, I think I know what you guys just did. There is a motion on the floor for approval of a 2021 CBA. Is that right?
CBA
Negotiation.
1.5%
And-
increase in salary.
Salary. That constitutes an amendment on the CVA, and that should be fine. And I think Priscilla and I both agree on that, do we not, Priscilla?
Yes.
There you go. And I'll
All right,
second
Priscilla.
her motion.
Whoa. Priscilla,
Yes.
I'm going to ask you for one more time, very clearly, without Jack interrupting, what your motion is.
I make a motion that we accept the 1.5% salary increase for teachers for the 2021 school year.
And I got a second from Jack. Is there anyone that would like to talk about this? We have a motion on the floor to approve the 2021 negotiations for teachers, and it's the CBA 1.5% increase. Deb, what's your pleasure?
My pleasure. Oh, yay.
Priscilla,
Got lost.
Yes.
Steve,
No.
David,
I also vote no.
Jason,
Yes.
Jack,
Sorry, yes.
Brenda, Ian,
Yes.
Should abstain.
yeah, I think Ian needs to abstain.
Oh, I do. Sorry, this is, for the teachers.
Yes.
I believe that I would ask you to do that because of personal.
Yep, I understand. So I understood that there were three, though. There's three different agreements that we're approving tonight, or two?
Oh,
Just two.
there is two.
This is the teachers.
Okay, sorry about that.
Do you agree with abstaining?
I do, yes, I agree with the statement.
Thank you. The motion passes. Priscilla, can we try again for support staff, please?
Yes, I would support, I would make a motion that we approve the 2021 agreement for the support staff that was negotiated. And I don't know the percentage. That's 1.5% off.
It's 1.5, yeah.
1.5% that was start again. I'll get it right. I make a motion that we approve the 2021 support staff agreement for 1.5% that wasn't for the 2021 school year, if I didn't.
Jack, have I got a second?
You do.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to approve the 2021 CBA 1.5% increase for the support staff. Is there any discussion?
I just have a quick question about my ability to vote for this one. Can I, my understanding is that I can only I can't vote for the one that includes my wife, but I can in fact vote for support staff. Is that correct?
And that would be my priorities. Yes, you should not be voting for anything where your wife is involved. So yes.
I do apologize for the misunderstanding in the last vote.
Deb,
Aye.
Priscilla,
Aye.
Steve,
I'll abstain from that one.
perfect. David,
I vote aye, Molly.
Jason,
Abstain.
Jack,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Ian,
Aye.
the motion has passed. We're moving on to new business. Rules for appointments, resignations, and filling of vacancies. Who is speaking to this? Is that Mr. Pratt?
I remember asking you to put something like this on the agenda. I'm not sure if that was, what I wanted to do was going forward, we talked about having trust and verification and full transparency. Just if there is any new hires or anything like that, if they could present that kind of like in a principal report Excel spreadsheet. I think that worked out really cool last time at the Rockingham board. And so we had a list of 15. We were able to just fire right through them, made sure they met the steps and there was no, everything was in order. So it just made it quicker. I was just hoping we could, going forward, continue to do that. That's all.
Okay,
So I'm not sure if that's exactly what, unless somebody else had mentioned something else.
hold on,
Maybe-
Jack.
Maybe.
So
maybe that's
this got sent to me. Did it get sent to everybody? That got sent to me today. Did you see that?
No, I don't think so. But today you got this?
Yeah.
No, I did not see this. So
Is
this
it,
what we're
is
gonna
that what you're looking
be- Yeah,
for?
yeah, something
Okay,
that
perfect.
says, it meets the or masters, BA,
Yep, yeah, that's got here, that's got where they are.
Yep.
So did this
Thank you.
get sent to everyone? Okay.
Molly,
So
I
this
did
can
not
be-
see it.
I
Okay,
didn't get it.
hold on. Yep, so I was just informed that it only got sent to me. I will forward it to everybody, probably not till tomorrow. It is basically what we used to see, when we used to have a list of all the teachers and where they were at. And this helps us with budget things also, so that's a good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Molly.
Any other comments, Jason?
I was just wondering, with Mr. Murphy's promotion, just what he was at and what he is currently at.
So I don't know that. But we will find that out, especially when we get the budget.
Thank you.
Because that's what that's what we used to see, where it was all those. Yes,
When we talked the last time, Jason, from now, certainly, I know it's going to be a superintendent supervisory action to get all the boards, but also what I certainly plan to do in my term is to, whenever we have a new hire, is to give you what we talked about the last time, the details of the person who it's replacing, what level they're on, what step they're on, masters, whatever, and then who the incoming person is. And it'll also show us the cost effectiveness of the experience level that we're bringing in and whoever we have going out as well. So
Just to echo back what you're saying, and it's not exactly for me about the money. It is a little bit, but also for other people to look at it and be like, wow, I'm a teacher, I'm making X. And now all of a sudden, if I work hard, I could be the vice principal. Now I'm going to make X, if that's how that works. So I think it's a good opportunity for people to want to grow in their position and continue to do better. So thank you.
I see Priscilla and then I see Jack.
Okay, Molly, keep in mind that the board has to approve all of those too. So that's that's another reason for needing that information. I wanted to bring up that apparently the chat is still on and we're not supposed to have the chat on. So if that's really distracting, so if we can get that shut off, that would be appreciated.
So we're told that it's not the chat room, it's that people have their mics on and there's people talking in the background.
No, it says,
So if
I can
every-
see two chats on there. I'm looking at it. It says chat and it's typed in there. It means it's supposed to be off for our meetings and it's in there. You can't see it because you're at the regular meeting, but anybody that's on Zoom can see it.
Okay, got it. Anything else? Jack?
Yeah, I actually thought this was about something else. Our board and the Westminster board had got into a discussion with our lawyer about when vacancies can occur on boards and what the process is for filling those vacancies. For example, whether or not the town select boards or the town school boards nominated people, and also for how long we served and what happens if we fail to notice or to place notice in our warning when there is a vacancy. These things have happened. I think that I'd like to have this discussion, perhaps the next meeting following, because I think it's important. I had suggested to administration, it may have got lost somewhere, that we contact our lawyer to find out what the ground rules are on this. And I think it's still important because all boards in our area tend to fill these a bit informally, and it's not entirely clear whether or not they're in accordance with our charter or state law. So I want us to get clear about it and clean this up if we might.
Okay. Deb Wright, any comments before we move on?
No, I was confused about why it was on there and I saw something from the Rockingham School Board, so you cleared it up. I'm fine.
Good, thank you. I have tried to do a better job at, after a meeting, sometimes people will say, I mentioned this to you and it didn't get on the agenda. So I sent an email out and got a whole bunch of stuff back, and most of these things are because a board member asked to have it put on, and so that's why it's there. Let's move on to fiscal support for multi-district waiting committee. Who's got that one?
Well, I didn't put it on, but I think I can speak to it, Molly. What this refers to is the, heaven help me, the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity. And the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity, which I think is cvtse.org, was created to try to mitigate what I would refer to as the pernicious effects of Act 173. Act 173 was legislation passed out by the Vermont legislature a few years ago to change special education reimbursement to a block grant. And because of the uneven nature of special ed populations in different parts of the state, it was beneficial to districts with low SPED rates, but very disadvantageous to districts which have high SPED rates. And arguably, this is one of them. And specifically, the problem was that the block grants did allow for increased aid to special needs or English as second language kids, among others. And I'm sure Andy knows all the details. And just to round off the numbers, SPED Kid, instead of being a 1.0 FTE, was now a 1.25. there was some pushback from Andy's posse on that, and I think a few others. And the legislature did in fact commission the study, and that study indicated that, well, really a sped kit is more like a 3.0 FTE. So that's a very brief overview of the mathematics that are involved in it. What the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity did was to lobby the legislature to address what is a pretty obvious inequity in funding under the block grant. And what the legislature eventually did was to create a task force to look at the weights. And of course, what's happened is that the mission of the task force has been expanded by a number of stakeholders who have enough number of different irons in the fire. And I'm telling you this because bluntly, and I love quoting Sally Warren, a former chair of this board, and I suppose for most people sitting at the table, I quote Sally ad nauseum. But what Sally famously said was, you don't build B-1 bombers with good intentions, you build them with money. And a number of districts around the state have supported very generously that lobbying effort, which is in its most immediate form, managed to lift the excess spending penalty, which Bellows Falls Union High School would otherwise be paying for the second year in a row. That's the immediate tax relief, if you will. But we're still working hard to get an equitable, what's referred to as weighting formula for high needs kids. And we are going to need, in addition to making a very strong effort, we have to spend more money. I have secured from the Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union Board their permission to lobby other supervisory unions to contribute to the effort. I have in the past sought permission from this board as sort of an up or down vote to use the high school letterhead for similar purposes. Ultimately, I think it will be appropriate for all of the districts in Wyndham Northeast to make a contribution, but I'm going to be very blunt and say the more money we can shake out of other districts, the less that we ultimately might have to pony up here. So I guess what I'm going to say here, this is an appeal the next time we meet to put the question directly on the agenda. And then I'll be back to you in October to see how much additional money we might want to raise locally. So that's, I think, the overview on it. And whoever put it on, I appreciate it. And Molly, I think you have a hand from our distinguished colleague from Grafton, who might have a few more things to say.
With your
Okay,
permission.
Jack.
All right. I put this on because we've talked about this for 6 months and we're asking other boards to pony up and we've not done so ourselves. I'm perfectly willing if Mr. Clark wants to wait another month, but let me just put a couple points on here for our consideration. We talk about this in more detail. According to Andy Haas, changes that were considered for per 173 would have cost this supervisory union $1 million flat. A little bit more, less, but that's the number. So we got a couple of people in here in business. Jason, what would you spend to save $1 million? Would you spend 1%? Would you spend 0.5%? Would you spend 2%? What's the number you'd spend? You know, I was prepared to suggest that we care enough to spend 1%, which is 10 grand. But other people might have different numbers, but we ought to have one. And if we don't care 1% worth, then my colleague, Mr. Clark, and all his efforts really were basically saying we don't support them. And I do support them, and I'd like us to support them with some actual money.
So is
Did you ask me a question? Would you like an answer?
It was rhetorical, but you can you go ahead, because Jason, that, this is the type of thing, some of us who've done this in business, what do you spend for this?
So I don't necessarily look at always constantly saving 1% on the bottom line. It's a real simple philosophy, Jack. Get as much money in a register as possible and protect the money to the bottom line.
Well,
Simple.
We're protecting $1 million. How much should we do to spend to save $1 million?
I guess it is rhetorical, Jack.
My question is, where does that money come from? Jack? Jack?
Yes, I am anticipating, I think that's perfectly reasonable. We spend money off budget at that level for a lot of things. $10,000 in a budget that is more than measured in the millions is, again, we're less than a fraction of 1%. And I think this is a question, since I'm going to defer to Mr. Clark's request this be pushed off a month. But if you're looking for suggested cuts, I can give you some. But I think that would be unfair to spring that on our superintendent or our principal right now. I'm just saying we're looking at a potential cost in following years of $1 million a year. And what do we want to do to stop that besides complain about it?
Okay, so I have heard this more times than probably I wished I'd heard, and just keeps getting repeated. You and David have a good handle on this, and I'm not telling you that I don't agree or disagree with it, but now that I have Mr. Haas at the table, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here, only because the honest truth is, when I hear coalition and I hear all these words, I have this imagination in my face that we're picketing in front of Montpelier or something. And if that's where my money's going, I'm not interested. But that's just what I hear when I hear David talk. So help me understand what it is and what should we really do as a district.
So as far as the coalition, it's something outside of my purview. I'm not a part of it. It's not something that other directors are. It's something that it's been born out of other side pieces that is not directly related with the supervisory union in any way. So as far as the cash, yeah, it's the rough estimate is $1 million as a potential impact to the local budget should Act 173, or when it does finally go through, is that piece. We have been, as a part of my association, the Vermont Special Ed Directors, they've discussed it. Obviously, within our organization, we have folks who are going to benefit from and folks who don't. And so there's been a lot of discussion of what position do they take, and they've kind of stood back a little bit as far as making a recommendation of which way to go to push it. But there is great concern of wanting an accurate weighting study to be fair and equitable for all of the districts. So as far as to advise you, should the district provide funds for it or not, I don't feel I'm qualified to tell you that we should. I know that the coalition has had success lobbying the legislature this past year.
So do you, if the Act 173, is that the right number? If that gets approved, goes through, automatically it's going to affect our Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union about $1 million?
No, so I would have to go back and look through the numbers because it's been delayed so many years, and when it's supposed to be enacted, 2023 sits in my head. And then it's a gradual push in. So it's not 2023, it's $1 million impact, but I can get that information for you. It has not, in the meetings that I've attended, it hasn't been as prevalent because of COVID. That's obviously been our biggest concern. And once we heard it was delayed, it's been on a back burner a little bit, but I can definitely go back, pull out the information, talk with the state director, Jackie Kelleher, and Jen Perry, who's the business person, and get you some hard numbers. I don't feel qualified to be able right now to give you hard numbers.
That I understand, and that's good. And David, I'm not disregarding all the hard work you've done, but I can't be the only one that doesn't totally understand you telling me. This is like the fourth time I've heard this, and I totally, I love your passion for this and that you're trying so hard, but it's hard for me to grasp it and to come up with a number, if I'm going to come up with a number, until I understand it completely. And I hope there's community members that are listening to this, because I don't understand it. So I can't believe that everybody around me does, but maybe they do. Maybe I'm just can't keep up with it. But if it's not a huge load on you, I would love a little bit of, a little bit more knowledge before we make a decision like that. David has told us he can wait a month. I'd like to put it on next month's agenda, but I'd like some more.
Yeah, I
need to have some more.
definitely, I can pull
And-
those
and
numbers.
Is that, you under,
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And from what I heard at a few meetings ago was, again, it goes back to the kids and it's about the kids. And what I heard was we were evaluating kids, and if they're borderline, we put them in special ed to get the money. Now it's like, uh-oh, we might not have the money. So now we have to go back and maybe reevaluate the kids. So for me, that's a tough nugget to swallow, where we're bouncing kids all over the place. And, it doesn't sound slimy almost.
right, and I want to do what's best for our community and our students for sure, but I need to understand why I'm doing it. David,
First off, I think that we can get a much more cogent explanation of the moving parts from Mark Schaber, who is, I believe it's River Valley's district. That's the Dover, Wilmington district, I believe. He is the a member, school director. He is also the executive director of the coalition. But want to address specifically with you, Molly, is where the money might come from. And as most people sitting around the table are quite well aware, we cashiered the Vermont School Boards Association a few years ago and used the money that we would have paid them for dues to support the effort against the forced mergers, which were so popular with the Agency of Education and the State Board of Education. The value of those dues that we have not paid to the Vermont School Boards Association for the last couple of years, of course, increase every year. And I'm going to tell you that although we have not budgeted for it, that's the pot of money that I think that we could use as a guideline as to what we should spend, Molly. At the time that we diverted the VSBA's funds, I think their dues are around $6,500 a year. My best guess is that they will now be up around $10,000 a year. And I want to also say that I think it's an appropriate discussion to have around the SU table, because that's an opportunity for all boards to have a discussion all at once at the same time, Molly. So my 2 points, recalculate the value of the VSBA dues that we're not paying. There's the pot of money that I would suggest we should be considering. And let's get a proper presentation from Mark Schaber, who can speak far more articulately to the mechanics of how the whole situation works. Thanks, Molly.
thank you. Do you have an email for this gentleman, or a correct print spelling of his name. If you could email me something, I would love it.
I sure enough will. And for whoever has the misfortune to be taking minutes, it's Mark, M-A-R-C, Schauber, S-C-H-A-U-B-E-R.
Thank you. So there is no action taken this evening on the multi-district weighting committee. We are
Molly?
going to,
Molly,
yes, Priscilla?
I have 2 points. I would caution that I don't think the way special ed was discussed a minute ago about how we put them in if they're borderline and take them out. I really, that would be illegal. And so I really want to caution that probably needs to be addressed, because we certainly look at whether a student is eligible and make sure that the student is eligible, and that would be the only reason that they would be put in special ed, not to get money. I would also be pretty uncomfortable with spending taxpayers' money for lobbying and doing those kinds of things. So I think maybe we need to look at places that we can raise money rather than taking our money that should go for the children and supporting the children in other ways and for programming and that kind of stuff, and just raising money outside rather than that. So maybe we should look at fundraising and that kind of things as a means for supporting that lobbying rather than taking our budget and using money there. Comment. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Let's move on to discussion of COVID safety protocols. That sounds like a good one. Who's got that one? Chris Pratt, is that you?
Can't hear Chris Pratt.
Stand by, we're fixing his mic.
That one works.
Okay, yeah, so Molly, what I've done in the other boards is just read the motion in regards to the wearing of masks. And so here we go. I'd like to request that absent of the governor's declaring a state of emergency and requiring adherence to the direction outlined in his August 4th memo, I recommend that the WNESU and each individual school board mandate that the following, that the board mandate that we follow the memo's directives. Recognize that absent further state action, the authority for a mandate to follow the advisory memorandum lies with each board. Further, we recognize that the mandates are divisive with many people on both sides of the issue. We aim to provide clarity to the students and families as we begin the school year. I would like to recommend that the board take this action in order to provide the safest environment under the current conditions so that students can attend and remain in school for in-person learning as long as possible. So I would suggest that make a motion based on the August 4th memo from the state that this board mandates those directives.
So before we go ahead, David, I guess I'd like to know what the board I think we need to know what that is.
What the state is proposing is that for the first 10 days of school, everyone wears masks. And then once they hit 80% of vaccinated, that they no longer have to wear masks. Stipulation is that right now, anyone 12 or under cannot be vaccinated. So for those schools, will be required to wear masks indefinitely or until a vaccination is put out for students.
So it's 80% of each one of our schools. So if
Correct.
the high school,
Each one of the schools.
So we are requesting that our students and staff tell us whether they're vaccinated or not?
No, the state puts together the data, and that at some point they would release that data to us. And the nurses have access to that. So once we get that information, it'll notify us of when we hit that 80% marker for each school.
So the state notifies you when students or staff has been vaccinated?
They don't notify me, they notify the medical personnel within the school, which is the school nurses at each school. And so once each school hits 80%, they no longer have to wear masks unless you're in a situation where your school where you have 12 years and under, and then they'd be wearing masks indefinitely, unfortunately, until a vaccination is for them.
Okay, David. Your mic is not on. You are?
Molly, I would like to move the motion the superintendent of schools has recommended. It appears to me that Bellows Falls Union High School is fairly straightforward. I don't believe we have any students under the age of 12, do we, John? Okay, so what that would mean is that when this building hits an 80% vaccination rate, that masks would become optional. So that's my motion.
Can I get a second? I don't have a second yet, but Priscilla's got her hand up.
Okay, it does concern me that the 80%, because I do know that there are people on there that have been vaccinated and their names are not in the state register. So we do need to be aware of that. So and I know that for a fact because I've been vaccinated and I know mine's not in the state. I checked it today. Also, it should be kept in mind that on that memo, it says masks when required may be removed when needed for instructional or operational purposes. So that's something that's not being put out there. And so it's allowable for teachers to instruct with them off and for other operational purposes, which makes it a little more palatable for those parents that are against masks. It also, the ones that are for masks need to be reassured that that the teachers are the ones in charge and that they will watch out for their students. Thanks.
Jason.
I would like to offer a friendly amendment to David's motion. Is that possible to do now or?
Well, we haven't got a second on the amendment yet.
Madam Chair, I will be the second so we can get the conversation going.
There we go.
I would like to offer a friendly amendment to David and echo what Priscilla said. I think it's very important that we kind of be specific and to also be in line with what we did at Rockingham. I'd like to amend the motion where if kids are sitting at a desk, that they, kids and teachers and staff, if they're sitting at a desk, just like at a restaurant, you can take the mask off while you're at the desk. And I'd also like to, since we don't know the numbers, Molly, and we don't know when we're going to get them, we revisit this every meeting where we can, so we're not locked into something all year long. So I don't know exactly how to word that other than every meeting, have it on the agenda, and every meeting we got to have numbers from the nurse so that.
Madam Chair, I would oppose that as a friendly amendment.
You can't oppose it, can you?
It's not friendly if we don't agree to it.
Well, you can vote it down.
But he can appeal to the board to amend the item, but he needs both the agreement of the person making the amendment and the second in order to make it a friendly amendment. It's just how it works.
Molly, he can do an amendment, but we don't need a second. Anyway, we're following Robert's rules under that, and our board does not require a second for any
Small
of them.
boards. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. We don't, she's right. We
Consider
don't
both
need a
my
second.
second and my objection withdrawn.
So we have,
However, Molly, let me ask, can I ask Jason, or you ask Jason for me, please, because I'm supposed to direct it to you. The memo actually says that teachers can, they can have it removed. That's why I read it, when needed for instructional operational purposes. So I think probably what he would want to do is to add following the guidelines, but being sure that anytime students are seated, they are removed, rather than making it only for those times.
Molly, point of order.
go for it.
Okay, for some reason, my hand won't go up on my screen. And that's the same problem with my bandwidth here. Anyway, my point of order is that I believe we passed a motion some time ago that we would keep the chat off during the meeting. However, someone continues to put comments in there concerning this subject matter.
I mentioned that earlier, that it needed to be turned off.
Mr.
Okay,
Pratt,
we're
should please
trying.
turn it off.
Okay, so I don't know if I can help with this, but hold on, David. I just want to read this. In this COVID-19 advisory memorandum, it says masks should be, excuse me, masks should be required indoors for students younger than 12 who are eligible to be vaccinated at this time. Masks, when required, may be removed when needed for instructional or operational purposes. Masks are currently required for all buses. Masks should not be required outdoors. I'm sorry, I don't. Are you referring to this as maybe, this already says they can take their masks off in class? Mr. Broadley or Mr. Pratt?
I mean, that right there, what you have in front of them, Molly, is what that we're proposing that boards adopt as mandated, so we can get the letters out to parents and teachers, because at this point, no one knows what to expect. We're just waiting for the high school board to make a decision on this so we can send our communication out to families.
Okay, so again, I'm gonna put the big dunce head on my head so that it isn't anybody else. If I read this as a parent, I'm not sure if I understand masks, when required, may be removed when needed for instructional or operational purposes. Does that pertain to teachers or students or both? And how do we know when required or may be removed?
That would be for both, but this teacher would make the determination when the mask would need to be removed for instructional purposes.
So does that mean if we have a classroom, what is the social distancing now?
They're still recommending 3 feet when possible.
So if a kid is at a desk and there isn't anybody 3 feet to them, then they can take their mask off, or not until the teacher tells them they can?
The teacher will make the determine whether or not they can take their mask off, because the mask is needed to be off for instructional, like phonetics or something like that. But that would have to be a classroom teacher decision of when masks come off and when masks go on.
I think sorry.
Go ahead, John.
I think the idea behind this loosely worded policy is, with absence of a state of emergency order, that a lot of the AOE are reflecting what we've already done and been successful with. I see Sean and I have had many conversations and talking about the differences of the first time and this time. So what we interpret that as, and again, it's just an interpretation, what I would like to see for the building is that we have as many moments for kids to take their masks off, but I interpret it as they will wear their masks when they come in and keep those on unless they are needed to respond or you take them off for participation in a class. I think that they can take them off when they eat. There is not the 6 foot distance regulation that we had before. But I do think that a lot of it is at the discretion of the teacher, depending on what the subject's being taught. And if not, they should keep them on. Now, further to that as well, we got good at, and especially in the early part of the year, we have a lot of opportunities for kids to go outside. There are a lot of classes that go outside. When you go outside, there are no masks at all. So I think it's trying to weave in what is best for our kids and how they're best going to learn and minimize the use of masks while following that guideline. Now, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but we're going to try and follow it as best we can. I don't think to say, okay, when you're, sitting down there, you can just, okay, it's good, you don't need to wear a mask. Or I don't think we can say to a teacher, okay, my class, you don't need to wear masks. I'm okay with it. Or some other teacher would have you wear them. So I think that's going to cause a lot of
So
disparity.
you're not going to leave it to the teachers to be able to say.
I think we instruct them on how and when they could take them off and give them opportunities to have their kids be mask free until we get by this initial start of school. I don't want it to go on forever myself. But I think we need to kind of abide by what they're recommending.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's going to be very confusing for all in the building, all teachers and staff. So,
David? It's not on.
I have not accepted Jason's friendly amendment. And I'm going to speak to my motion, which will explain why. There is a very large uptick in what's referred to as breakthrough COVID cases. Those people who have had their inoculations, 2 of them, like me, unless you were Johnson & Johnson. And in that regard, I would actually prefer to be following CDC guidelines. However, this is one of those times when I'm completely willing to accept administration's recommendation, because I think it does it's the middle ground. And I will certainly vote in favor of the motion unless it is successfully amended, but I do not currently accept Jason's amendment, which I think is very well intended as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so I'm just going to go around the table because I know this is a hot topic. Deb, you're next.
I am. Okay, my hand came down. I would like to say it's not truthful to tell anyone or to propose a 10-day masking period. It's not truthful because that's not the reality. What the reality is that it's going to be an indefinite process until we are advised by the CDC through the nurses when it actually has reached 80%. So it shouldn't even have that in the motion because it's an erroneous charge, which we cannot stick to. So there's no point in it. That's a big concern to me. And the reality is we still have the same problem. We have to be consistent throughout the school system. It's not appropriate for the high school to be different than others. But again, we cannot mandate 10 days because that's not the truth. Thank you. That's all I have to say about it.
Steve, you got any comments? Is Steve Fine still on? Okay, I
think
think
he's
we lost
gone.
Steve.
Yeah, I think so.
Priscilla, you're next.
Deb is right in the fact that that 10 days, but it only says 10 days. They have to have it on, and that will continue until the 80%. So at the end of 10 days, unless the CDC, wrong terminology, sorry, unless the state has told the high school that it's at 80%, it would continue at that point unless we revisit it. We can obviously revisit it at any time that we have a meeting and it's on our agenda to be brought up. So it doesn't mean we have to wait forever to change that if we are feeling comfortable with them doing that. Jason can make that amendment if he wants to and put in when they're seated, they can take their masks off anyway, no matter what. Or we can go with what the state recommends. And if you're reading through it, which I've got a copy in front of me, so I'm reading it. So that's why I'm commenting on it. All students have to come to school on a bus with them on. If they come on the bus, they can not wear them in their cars if they're coming by car, of course. And like John Broadley was saying to us, masks aren't required outdoors, so hopefully all of the high school classes are going outdoors just as much as they possibly can. Thanks.
Brenda, you're next. If you have no comment, that's fine, but we're gonna let everybody get their words in here and get it over with.
No, I have lots of comments, but in regards to the middle ground, I firmly believe that unless it was a state of emergency, you can't mandate it. You can recommend, but you can't mandate it.
We can.
Yeah, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist just because I disagree. And I disagree. And I have strong issues if I had children. I have grandchildren. I have strong issues if my grandchildren under 12 would be mandated to wear a mask because there's no vaccine. I wouldn't even want them to have the vaccine at this point. I don't have any clear guidance from science or anybody at this point for my body and my choice and my kids and my grandkids. So I'm not comfortable with it. But I do recognize the problem of a huge group of people in an administration that has to be responsible for that. So I don't know how to justify my comment with that. I like the point where you can sit down and take your mask off if you're 3 feet away. I don't know. I know there's different rules in different states, but in Pennsylvania, where they were very strict, my kindergarten sister teacher can take mask breaks with her kindergartners. They can just randomly do that. I don't know how they do that, but they do. When they're sitting socially distanced, they can take a break, put it back on. So I don't know how all this works, but I'm sorry. That's what I'm not sorry, but that's what I say.
Okay, thank you, Brenda.
Yep.
Ian, you're next.
So a couple thoughts. The first is that we really had a pretty successful year last year avoiding getting anybody sick. And kids were masked the whole time. We just have been spending a bunch of time today and in the last meeting talking about how we're not sure the HVAC system is as good as we thought it was during the course of as David just pointed out, that this Delta variant is causing breakthrough infections, but also just a tremendous number of infections in the unvaccinated population. So I feel like it makes a lot of sense to just continue to do what we did successfully last year, particularly as we start this year. I tend to believe the same thing that Mr. Broadley heard, which is that this is going to be a wave that will ideally end by the end of fall, early fall, maybe middle of October. We'll be through this wave anyway. But one thing I think would be great if we could find out, if we could just find out what the percentage of our students and faculty, staff are currently vaccinated. So how close are we to 80%? So how close is that 2 weeks really? Is 2 weeks going to be enough time, or people say, wow, I'm a little bit more motivated to go ahead? They just end the emergency use authorization for the one of the vaccines today. Maybe that'll encourage people to go ahead and get their kids vaccinated. I do believe that it makes a lot of sense to be cautious at this time.
Is that it, Ian?
Sorry, yeah. Sorry to be so abrupt.
Okay. Chris Pratt has his hand up. I'm gonna let him speak, and then I got a couple more board members to hit.
Yeah, so I mean, just state, I think the key word here is until we reach 80%. Right now, we don't know when we're going to have access to that 80%. I know our nurses are aware of that, and they'll get the numbers from the state as soon as they can. But right now, we have no definitive in when, after 10 days, we're hoping that the state will be able to get those 80% numbers. If they're saying, after 10 days, I'd like to be optimistic and think that they'll be ready to give us that information after 10 days. I should say guardedly optimistic. But so I understand the concerns that everyone's having here, but I think we just need a starting point. I think the starting point, like Mr. Clark said, we have middle ground here. We're just asking for the first 10 days that we be masks. And then whether or not we get the 80% from the state or not, like Priscilla said, the boards can go back and revisit this anytime. And if you just, right now, my concern is community and the parents need to know, and teachers need to know what we're expecting to them when they show up in the school. So all I'm asking for is use this as a placeholder, if nothing else, and then put it on the agenda for your next board meeting and do a check-in and gauge the pulse of it.
Okay, Jason, you're next.
Thank you, Molly. I just wanted to clarify. My motion is for after 10 days. So mass for the first 10 days, just like we did at Rockingham. And then I want to be consistent across the district. And, as Mr. Pratt alluded, when I hear some point we might get the numbers, or as soon as we can get the numbers, that scares me. And it goes to your question of, it seemed kind of vague when you're asking, as a parent. So for me, it seems kind of vague. And when Mr. Broadley was speaking on it, it was like, I felt teachers may have them take it off, may not take it off. Just, we have a chance to be leaders in this. And again, I'm looking for consistency. I'm looking for the numbers. And, I bet you more people are at 80. We might already be at over 80%. And, and again, I just don't want to be locked in all year. And I want to be able to somehow write this so that we have control to revisit this on a monthly basis and pivot. I'm new at this, but last month's org chart said that we were in charge. So thank you.
Jack, I think that I'm gonna let you speak.
I've been on this board off and on for more than 20 years. Nothing that we've ever discussed upsets me more than the tenor of this conversation. We're talking about amending a state of Vermont compromise that itself is unacceptable. I had asked our administration, and I don't know why they didn't do this, to send around a video from Keith Loud. Remember our advisor, who said, not only did he compliment us for how well we had done, and he actually expanded it to a general piece, but not only did he compliment us for how well we had done in keeping case counts to 0, but went on to say that there were certain lessons to be learned from that. Among them was the necessity of masking. Now, I know most of you guys don't follow this. Unfortunately, I have to because that's what I'm doing right now. It's becoming my job. I want you to know a few things. This is not debatable. These are facts. The hospitalization rate for kids is fully as high as it is for adults.
That's because
since
you're not
Delta-
vaccinated.
I'm sorry, I have the floor and you're wrong. Now, just wait a minute. The hospitalization rate.
Jack, I apologize. I didn't
Please.
realize it wasn't
Madam
muted.
Chair, I asked to.
I
speak.
apologize.
Thank you. The hospitalization rate for children over the age of 12, under the age of 18, is identical with that of older folks in the 30 to 45-year-old brackets. 15% of the population right now in hospital with COVID is in our age group. Now you're going to appreciate that is a 5-fold increase over what it was in the original version of COVID. So we're talking about something that is a sentence. People get brain damage, they get lasting circulatory problems. This can be a lifelong condition at the same rate that polio was in the 50s. And your parents had the decency enough to get you vaccinated and were concerned enough to make certain that you weren't at risk. We need to do the same thing. The CDC guidelines are masking. End of story. The state has wimped out and come up with this compromise. It makes me a little nauseous, but I'm willing to go along with it because it's still better than nothing. It's not a lot better than nothing, but it's better than nothing. We need to pay attention to science. We need to pay attention to the CDC. They are a global source of excellence. When I hear people say, well, what do they know? Or what is the science? They are the damn science. They are the center of expertise. We might want to listen to them. And if you don't want to listen to them, listen to the guy that we asked to advise us, Keith Loud. He said the same thing. So when we go to the state guidelines, they are already bathwater compared to what's necessary here, but at least it's something. To suggest that somehow it can be voluntary, an epidemiologist associated with Dartmouth College said that voluntary masking is like having a no pee section in a swimming pool. It doesn't work. And it's a perfectly absurd concept. You have to mask or you're not going to be effective. The nasal load of virus, another fact, for the Delta variant is over 1,000 times what it is for the original COVID we knew and loved and closed the whole damn school down about last time. And now we're talking about not taking the most minimal step, a step everybody was dying to have us do instead of going hybrid. Suddenly that's objectionable. I object to that logic because that isn't logic. I'm done with the lecture. I'm not even sure I can be on a board that does this type of stuff. It's so anti-scientific. It's so neglectful of our children. It really is so neglectful of our at-risk kids that, in my view, it constitutes a civil rights issue. And it's one that I'm prepared to explore further because I really believe that's true. Because you've got kids with bad lungs and you're going to put them in a situation where you're putting them at risk, and there's no damn good rationale for it. Now, I'm willing to support David's compromise because I don't believe this board would approve the CDC guidelines. But to water it down further is just offensive.
Anyone else have any comments or questions before we move on this? Priscilla.
Yeah, this time, I must have waved over that when Jack was on, and I apologize because all of a sudden it was unmuted. But anyway, Pfizer did approve their vaccine today. The CDC approved Pfizer's vaccine So it's no longer an emergency vaccine. So maybe that'll get more of our kids and parents involved in getting that. But nurses should be able to check the records of students just like other immunizations. Those are all possible things for them to put in their health records. And that way, they should be able to figure out the percentages pretty easily. They just have to bring in their vaccine card and put it into the record. It would make it much easier. Today, or in the last few days, I don't know which, but NYC has mandated vaccinations for all of its teachers. Harvard Unified Schools has mandated vaccines for their teachers in our state. So that's coming as well for our teachers. And I think our teachers are pretty high in their percentage rates also, but our nurse should be able to get those percentages too, to be able to share with us. So I would ask that maybe some of those things be done as well along with these things. And did Jason make an amendment or not? I'm not clear.
He made an amendment, but Mr. Clark has refused his amendment.
But that was a friendly amendment. Did he make an amendment? Because he can make an amendment without it being a friendly one, and it is an amendment.
He has not.
I would like to.
You're it.
I would like to, yes.
You gotta tell me what at this point. I already know what you said.
Molly, I would like to amend David Clark's motion that after the first 10 days, after masking the first 10 days, it is optional. If kids are sitting at a desk, they can take their mask off. And I would also like us to get numbers consistently from the school nurse. And we have the ability to pivot at every meeting as needed. Thank you.
So I have your amendment and I do have a question on it. We have a motion on the floor to follow this COVID-19 advisory memorandum that specifically says masks, when required, may be removed when needed for instructional or operational purposes. Masks should be required indoors for students younger than 12 because they're not eligible for vaccination. My question in this that I'm trying to follow is, what if our desks, and I'm not telling you I agree or disagree, but I'm asking, what if our desks are not 3 feet apart? Because that's where I think this is kind of looking at. You know, I've heard every side of the story. I mean, I get that, you know, kids that your kid is in school with, you've been playing basketball with all summer. So you don't, you know, I get all that argument.
Yep.
But when you look at what this is telling us, are our desks in school now separated like they were last spring? I mean, or have we put the school back together and they're sitting like you three are sitting?
The desks are pretty much back to normal, which is approximately 3 feet. I would say if you were going to guess in every classroom on an average, there's a distance between them. They're not right up against each other. So
I just know that in the public's eye, maybe that's important just to get out there that, you know, are we still sitting, 12 kids at a table and sharing the same cell phone, or are we separated things out a little bit so that I know we got plenty of room here if we try. So I just think that needs to be out.
I also believe though that the kids have been used to this, and I don't know if they loved it or didn't love it. That there's also an area of just lack of knowledge right now with this other variant, all the news that's going on, all the figures, you watch them change every day with whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated and the opinions around vaccination. There's just so many variables that the bottom line is, first, we've got to keep our kids safe, and we've got to do what we deem as right by following guidelines, for this building and for what we're doing here. That's all I can control in this building, with the help of everybody else and your advice as well. But I think if we do go strong, I think once we get to an 80%, then we should, as Jason just said there, as we revisit it and we got to be able to pivot for each event, then we can make that decision whether we're going to say that they would be optional. I still think you want to leave it on that any student who feels they want to wear a mask can wear a mask, because that will help their confidence. So
I think that one of the most interesting things about this board is we have such an array of different people. And, we all need to respect each other and what we believe in. One of the things that I think I've listened to you, John, and I've listened to Jack, and I've listened to Brendan, I've listened to all you guys, and I'm not going to tell you where I feel I am right now, but I'm going to ask one more question, and that is, where does it fall into sports? I don't have a kid in the school right now, but I still can't wait to go watch that next football game and go sling hamburgers and the booster thing. And I hope it's open and we can, because that's like,
yeah,
that's exciting for me.
You can do all that.
So where does that mean for those kids staying on that sideline? Do they have to mask, or is it because they're outside?
Right now, outside, all masks are off.
Okay.
And you watch kids. I mean, I watch them every day. They're responsible now. They've learned a lot from this pandemic. So they are responsible. They're not in each other's face as much. They're respectful of other people. They're respectful of distance. They don't lean all over you. You watch them when they go to buy their hamburger. They'll be standing back. They'll be reaching their hand out. It won't be leaning all over. And
there's a joke in my family. I've always liked social distancing.
Right.
So I think it's really important though that people hear that we are, so if a kid has to wear a mask in school, but when they get out, they're able to have some room and still be with their friends and it's best they don't hang all over each other anyway. So
it's also why I think, Molly, that hopefully in the first 4 to 8 weeks, that a lot of the classes that do utilize going outside, everywhere from band, they can go out and chorus, they can go out and they can scream their lungs out outside. Band can go out and blow their instruments till they're blue in the face. And we have all the tents, and I'm pointing around the building where English can go out and do their reading outside, simply because they can go out and take the mask off, no problem. And yes, respectful of distancing. However, it's not being so far away that you can't see your neighbor. So, and I think if we get that consistency, and it's our job to get it over to the staff initially to say, okay, here's how we're going to start. And then as time goes on and factors change, and we talk about it here as well, and make decisions of where we want to move next. But I think being safe is definitely the first way to go. So. But outside, hey, I can't wait to see you. In fact, I think I'll buy you first hamburger at our first time.
Okay. Chris.
I've been part of a lot of these discussions at each of the board meetings. And I can say, as administrators, and I know, I share this a lot of sentiments with a lot of board members, is that our first and foremost priority is that when people send us their kids, that we're able to say, yes, we can keep you safe. And I think that's really what it comes down to. If it means students have to wear masks, whether it's 10 days or beyond that, but we can verify that we're doing everything we can to contain this COVID and this variant, then we need to do that. If it means it's going to cause a little discomfort that we have to wear masks, I think that's a good trade-off for the alternative. And I understand that, masks, whether we agree or not, is a political hot topic, but we got to make our decisions what's based on keeping every single kid and every single employee in this building safe at all times. And so, like I said, if we have to wear masks for 10 days and it's discomfort, we do that. If we have to wear them more than that, we have to do what we need to do to keep everyone safe. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to.
And my understanding, Chris, just so we all understand, it may come a time when the high school will be in a point where they will not have to mask, but other schools may have to mask.
Right, that's correct.
Because even though it blows my mind that the state can report that to you, the state can actually, you can look at something that tells you each individual. How do they know?
They
I
don't tell,
don't, probably I shouldn't ask
yeah,
that
they don't tell
question,
us the
but-
individuals. They just say overall for your school population, this is the
Okay.
percentage that you're at. However, schools that are 12 and below, they're going to be wearing masks indefinitely until there's a vaccination and they can start accumulating that data. But like I said before, if it means keeping our kids safe, whether it's wearing a mask for 10 days or, the whole year again, I think that's, there's a trade-off there. Either, this new variant doesn't care if you've been vaccinated or not. And I think that's what we have to think of right now. It's not just about the old variants. It's about this new variants where vaccinated or not, people are getting it. And we don't know what this is going to do long-term to people. And so whether I personally agree with masks or no masks, it's my first responsibility is to keep the school community safe. So I'm do whatever we can to make sure that we're doing that.
Okay. I think we've beat around the bush enough. I'm gonna give everybody one more chance, quick. Priscilla, go, 30 seconds.
You threw me with that, Molly. Yeah, when, if we're doing 10 days and Jason's is talking about after 10 days, then any students without teacher's permission can take them off at their desks. When are we having a meeting if we voted to go with that? Because we made on the first, the second and fourth Mondays. So the second
Well-
Monday is when?
Hold on. The 13th of September.
And that is
School
that.
doesn't,
start
school
till the
doesn't
7th.
start till the 7th.
That's
So
only
your
5
next
days.
meeting- Okay. The next meeting isn't until the 27th. Right? Second and fourth.
13 and 14, 27th. Yeah. So that would be actually 15 days. So if we haven't gotten the 80% from the state
It'll
by
be
then,
19
we'd
days.
be able to talk about this again.
We're gonna put it on the agenda for the 27th. That means that the kids will be in school 19 days.
No, 15 school days.
14, I'm sorry, can't count tonight.
Yeah,
Getting late.
14 school days.
So it only gives them 4 extra days. And we will revisit it on the 27th. Okay,
Thank you.
I'm gonna be on vacation that day though, so it might be a pretty fast meeting. All right, so I'm gonna go to the amendment right now. And I hope I've kept track of this. Right now, we have a motion that has been amended. We had a motion to accept the COVID-19 mask that Chris Pratt read. And I think that you just read this paragraph. Is that right, Chris? Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly do this just so it's out there one more time. To allow school districts time to calculate the percentage of currently eligible students who have received 2 doses or of a 2-dose vaccine, schools should require universal masking for all students and staff when indoors for the first 10 instructional days of the school year. Currently, all Vermonters aged 12 and older are eligible to be vaccinated. Following the first 10 instructional days of the school year, masks should no longer be required for all those eligible for vaccinations when the vaccination rate, 2 doses of a 2-dose vaccine among students is equal to or greater than 80% of the school's currently eligible population. My understanding is the nurses are going to get that information off something from the state. masks should be required indoors for students younger than 12 who are not eligible to be vaccinated, which is not the high school. Masks, when required, may be removed when needed for instructional or operational purposes. Masks are currently required for all passenger on buses for federal regulations, regardless of age or vaccination status. Masks should not be required outdoors. Guidance will be updated when vaccine eligibility expands. That was basically the motion that David Clark made, correct, David? I'm losing you. It's almost 9:30. So now we have an amendment to that motion that's on the floor right now that says after masking for 10 days, it is optional to take your mask off when you are at your desk in a classroom. Is that correct?
Correct.
I would like to vote on the amendment. Lost my writing stick. Deb Wright. Did I lose Deb Wright? Okay, we'll move to Priscilla. I've lost Priscilla. Jack Breyer.
No.
Brenda.
Yes.
If we didn't hear that very soft voice, it was yes. Ian.
No.
Jason.
Yes.
David. David has abstained.
Yes, Molly, I have abstained.
Is Steve Fine still here? Priscilla, are you back?
Yes, I'm gonna vote yes.
We're voting on the amendment and you're voting yes. Deb Wright, are you back? Deb Wright is gone. So we have 1, 2, 3 yeses and 2 nos. The motion has passed. And I feel sorry for the person who's taking notes right now. Can I write on this? So I'm going to add to this paragraph that what we said, what was just approved was after masking for 10 days is optional to take your mask off at your desk during class. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I can do this busy work afterwards. I just want to make sure I'm helping whoever's doing this. That's not what he said, but Mr. Broadley has said that most everything is 3 feet, so I think we were hoping he had that. Okay, we are done with discussion of COVID safety protocols. Is that correct? Okay, we're done. If anyone has items for the next agenda, email me. I think we're with school coming back into.
Point of order, Molly. I'm sorry. So we just voted on the amendment to the motion, correct? So we didn't actually vote on the motion itself?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I was so anxious to move on.
Yeah, I believe it. I'm sorry to do that. But one question I have is if we were to vote down this motion, what would that leave us with? No COVID protocols at all?
That's right.
Somebody made.
Okay, so we have we have a motion on the table. And I think we all know what it says, but after masking for 10 days, it is optional to take your mask off at your desk during classroom time. Now we got to vote on the motion. Okay. Jack,
I really need to push back on the idea that we have not, if we've taken no action or voted this down, whether or not that requires there to be no policy, it just means that we have failed to adopt it and the item can be brought back the following week or the following meeting. Because presently I'm prepared to vote no, because I think this is worse than no action.
yes, if it gets voted down, the only thing it can do is get brought back to the next meeting.
That's what I would prefer to have happen. Okay.
Which
thank you.
means when those poor kids go to school on whatever day, it's before our next meeting and there's nothing.
Well, there's no real effective difference between what we have proposed and nothing at all.
Well, there is, because right now.
Not really,
you're
not
saying-
medically. I disagree.
Okay, hold
with
on,
Madam
Jack.
Chair.
So I understand how passionate you are, and I'm not telling you you're right or wrong, but if this gets passed, they will be masked for the first 10 days. And then you will have, on the 14th day of school in process, it will be the next meeting and it will be up on the agenda for discussion. Yes, Chris.
It's my understanding if it's voted down and we're going into the school year without something in place, it defaults to the principal's decision in regards to what gets done.
Okay.
Therefore, that's my understanding as well.
Okay, are we ready for the motion? There is a motion on the floor. I should have known this by heart by now. For masks to be used following the for the first 10 instructional days of the school year, they are required, and after that, masking for 10 days, it is optional to take your mask off in class while you're at a desk. Deb, how do you vote? Oh, she's not here anymore. Priscilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
David, how do you vote?
Deb, I'm going to, sorry, Molly, I'm going to vote yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Jack,
No.
Brenda,
Yes.
Ian.
No.
So we have 4 yes and 2 no. Thank you, Ian, for rolling me back in. I was ready to go home. The motion has passed. Items for the next agenda. Email them to me, please. I need them. I'm going to tell you when I need them because Nicole really tries hard, but sometimes we're pushing her. I need them by the 20th of September. Anything you want on the agenda has to be emailed to me by the 20th of September. Director's comments. Deb is not here. Priscilla. Priscilla,
Okay.
director's comments.
Okay, it is likely COVID-19 will be with us for some time, a lot longer than what any of us are thinking or imagining, because, and stop and think that the cold is actually a COVID type virus that has been downgraded. I read a report today that feels vaccines protect against serious illness. So we should be realizing that all of us that are vaccine have received that, we're really in a good position. Students' mental health also tells us the importance of in-person instruction. So doing all we can and encouraging parents to also is essential. I really hope that we will see by the 10 days that we have 80% vaccinated. And I would encourage the nurses looking at it as an immunization, and that they have immunization records, and simply adding that vaccine to the students' immunization records would give them that information much sooner. Prayers go out to all those facing serious illness, family crises, and families in the Middle East that are trying to get out of a war-torn country. Thank you.
David Clark.
Thanks, Molly. Apropos to our basketball discussion, I actually like Chadwick. I can remember the seriously challenged. Okay. Live? Okay. I'm sort of a Chadwick supporter because I remember last time he was coached that he had serious challenges from a family with a ball player.
We cannot hear you again, sir.
This one. Losing the battery. Okay. I think Chadwick will do the best he can. And I've seen him doing the best he can. I was very interested in this discussion because I remember another discussion many years ago, John, Little League. Coach said to the parents, "What do you want?" And the parents had a lot of, shall we say, warm and fuzzy things to say. And after a half hour, 40 minutes, he said to the kids, "What do you want?" And they said, "We want to win." Kind of interesting statement. And I very much believe that varsity ball is not instructional league, and it's all about winning. And that's important. It's very important, particularly when you're trying to recruit families to your community, that you project a winner's image. And heaven help me for saying this, but I think that when Abby Broadley lines up at the line, she's not aiming for second place.
Jason.
Thank you, Molly. I would just like to echo my director's comments from the Rockingham meeting, is that you can be in favor of something, but not opposed to it being mandatory. You can also be against something, but not in favor of it being banned. And Mr. Barley, Mr. Murphy, I wish you guys great luck. And I think you guys are going to do a great job. And I do appreciate everything you guys do for the school and the community and for the kids. So win and be perfect at everything. And Molly, good meeting today and really structured, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Breyer.
Well, needless to say, I'm heartsick about the decision we've made tonight. I notice that if we're going to set an example about voluntary masking, I noticed only one of the members at the board tonight is wearing one. And that was kind of the point where I knew that this was going to be a losing proposition. I really got to sit back and think about my tenure here if we make decisions that are this irresponsible. I feel for parents who have kids that are at risk that now have no effective safeguard. I feel for families who have older members of their community are more fragile that now have a Petri dish for high school. And I really debated withdrawing and declaring a lack of a quorum to kill this thing tonight. It was very tempting, but I didn't think it would make much difference if I did that. So we went over the waterfall. God help us all. Thank you.
Brenda.
Um, I am excited that we are going to 5-day in school instruction. I believe that there's been a lot of strong feelings, and feelings aren't necessarily science. And I believe we all have a lot to learn, and science is still evolving. So forgive me if I don't trust it altogether. I believe we're going to be looking at boosters soon. So vaccinations, boosters, I don't know where it all ends. But I believe that if we can move forward, I believe that it's very important for the emotional and mental state of our children and our youth. And I firmly believe that. But I do believe we can do it safely and considerately. I did see us in a position tonight that we might have needed to compromise because there are such strong convictions, I guess would be the word I'd say. And so I just want to believe that the administration will be empowered as they go forward, even though we have not all been in agreement on some of these things, that we will be supportive as we move forward. I love that we're going to do this every month or every meeting so that we can still change our minds and change our convictions I believe we have. I don't believe my logic can be judged and evaluated by your logic. I am an individual, and my decisions and my thoughts and my convictions are based on lots of things, some things that you haven't experienced. So collectively and community-wise, I guess as a support to each other, using common sense and consideration, and just moving forward.
Thank you. Is Ian still with us?
Sure am. Thank you, Molly. So I think, to me, this COVID conversation is a real bummer, and I think it's probably a real bummer for a lot of people, in part because though I never thought COVID was just going away, I agree with what Priscilla said. I think this will just become sort of part of our common cold or our seasonal flus at some point down the line. I did believe that we were going to get to like November or December before a wave came through, that we would be coming into the school year in the same way that we sort of enjoyed ourselves on the way out last year. And so to have this sort of in our face this quickly because of the Delta variant is definitely a bummer. I do think we just made our schools slightly less safe. I am hopeful that either we are at or close to 80% now so that we can be at 80% within the 2 weeks after school starts, so that this decision we made tonight doesn't really impact anything. Or if Delta continues to get worse, that the governor decides to lead like he did last year and sort of takes the decision out of our hands and makes us follow the best practices. I'm hopeful it doesn't get that bad, and I'm hopeful that our population is at or near 80% as we speak, so that we can just kind of ease into this school year in a safe way. Thank you.
Okay, so it's my turn. It's late. We all want to go home, but I got just a couple of comments because we and I'm not disregarding COVID at all. I respect everybody and what you've got to do, and I know that Mr. Bradley and Mr. Murphy are going to do the best thing they can to make sure that these kids are safe and the school is safe and they're doing all their cleaning, and I just know that's going to happen because that's the kind of guys they are. The three things that I wrote down that came out of this meeting for me, other than this last discussion, is AP classes. Pretty excited to hear about those. I think we spend a lot of time on a lot of stuff, and maybe we've got a handful of kids, maybe we got a dozen kids, maybe we got 2 dozen kids, I don't know. But those kids that are at that level, I hope that they always get the time and the things they need to be able to grow, but sometimes I think that we spend a lot of time on a whole bunch of other stuff, and I think it's great to hear that we're increasing or looking into that. That's great. And not that we don't always try to do a good job, but I was glad it was brought up and that at least I got to hear about it. Fall sports. Fall sports are a huge thing for this community. And it feels really good to know that they're starting and that we're going to have games. And, maybe I'm even going to be allowed to come to a football game or a field hockey game. I tried to go to a field hockey game last year and they stopped me at the gate and wanted to know who I was. I couldn't go in. I left work early to go watch a field hockey game and I wasn't allowed in. Whose kid is yours? I tried to make up a name. I didn't even know a name on a field. So it's important. It's important for the community. So we need to do what's best to keep everybody healthy so that doesn't get shut down on us. And the last thing I'm just going to touch on because I am excited about it. I'm excited that we got a new basketball coach and that he seemed really excited about being here. And I want to win. I'm no different than Jason. He says it more often than I do, but I think we all, I don't know, I got a competitive edge probably just as much as Jason does, and probably most of us here. We just don't, maybe sometimes say it the way we ought to, but I felt good about him. And I can't wait to get in that gym and have it be rocking. And so as the community, instead of, everything else we talk about, I hope that I see the community out there, come to these games and get that gym jumping up and down. 2 years ago, it was so much fun to go in that gym. It was awesome. And love to see that come back. So there's your chair's comments for the night. I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned at 9:43. Thank you, everyone.